Yo, what's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning into this next edition of the Sunday Scaries portion of the podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by a multitude of people. I can say this was the biggest Sunday Scaries we have had yet, and it's a pretty long conversation, but it's a good one. I'm joined by my co-host Moist, along with some other familiar faces. Kenny from Pomp's Crypto course is back in here. He's the brains and brawn of that course, along with some members from my cohort, Cohort-3, and some newly started members from Cohort-5. I'm also joined by some good friends from Twitter, Dennis Porter and Lawrence Douglas. He made a brief appearance as well. We touched on a multitude of subjects, such as people were asking how the podcast started. I gave a little bit of background on that. We talked about the perspective of Bitcoin from some Cohort-5 members and kind of what they've learned in the first week of Pomp's Crypto Academy. And then we also touched on announcements from Bukele and Jack Mallers calling out Brian Armstrong of Coinbase. And of course, we talked about Bitcoin, game theory, and just some other main principles that Bitcoin maxis kind of bring to the table. But I'll let you guys listen. Timestamps are in the description below, and enjoy, guys.
So Alan, why don't you kind of give us a background, like, how you guys started this podcast? Did you guys, all three of you, know each other? Or
No. So the story is actually pretty funny. I'm sure somewhere, I think tomorrow, you guys have a crypto happy hour or something like that going on? Yesterday. Gotcha.
Yeah, I was on until like midnight last night.
Oh my God. We didn't even get off until like 11:30.
Six hours.
Eastern?
Eastern, yeah.
No fucking way.
Yeah,
it was good though.
That's crazy.
I love that shit. That's me and Alan and Dennis, dude. Like, I actually had it wasn't an argument, but a talk with my fiance yesterday. She's like, Ken, you were like 14 hours on Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces, and with the course today. Like, what's your deal? And I'm like, I got fucking people to talk to. I don't know.
Yes, happened. My wife came in last night. I was in the bedroom because my office is out in the garage and I don't have AC out there and it's freaking hot as hell in New York. So I was in the bedroom with the AC until like 11:30. My wife's like, "Can I go to sleep yet? Like, what are you doing in there?" I was like, "Oh, it's all yours now. Go to sleep."
A great time.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you though.
No, you're all good. You're all good. Yeah. So real quick to answer Paul's question about just how we got things started. So we did that happy hour thing. After entering the class, I realized that like there's some very smart people in my cohort. And for me to get a job, I was like, I either have one or two options. I gotta have a really witty resume or I gotta make my own. So I was like, I've always wanted to start a podcast. I always had the biggest issue I had was finding other like-minded Bitcoiners to kind of hop in. So I pitched it to both Shawn and Moist in about 15 seconds on the crypto happy hour. I was like, hey, let's do a podcast. And then we ended up meeting up that Saturday. And then we got our first guest, Ryan, who is no longer, is he still a coach or is he full-time?
No, he's still he's in the Slack and stuff, but he's busy. He's
I figured
busy. Yeah.
But Claire, I think, took his spot. I'm guessing.
Yep. That's okay. Right. Yeah. Claire's awesome.
I haven't met Claire yet, but I would like to meet her. But anyway, so we pulled Ryan. He's an older coach. He was our first guest. We did this all in about 4 days. And then it just kind of spiraled out from there. We got Jacob, who's down and below there. He reached out and was like, hey, let me produce for you. And I was like, hey, I don't have time to do all the timestamps and the recording and finding of the guests and all that. So Jacob's been awesome. And then subsequently, he met Dennis, and I'll let Dennis introduce himself real quick to you guys as well. But Dennis is the host of SmartPeopleShit. Very, very smart guy. Him and Kenny are in Clubhouse all the time, and he's shaking his head. He's like, no, Alan, I'm not smart. Although he runs a podcast called SmartPeopleShit. How's it going,
for
Dennis?
the other people are smart that I bring on, not me.
You're going to say that.
Yeah, that's why I do it. I got to bring them on. Yeah, so I started the podcast, let's see, what am I in, like 12 episodes or something like that? Jacob would know better than me. But I came on here once and met up with Jacob, and he's just tearing it up, doing the producer stuff. And it's been a great connection ever since. Let's see. I started out originally talking about Bitcoin 2017, but I didn't know enough about it and didn't understand the technology well. So a lot of times when I started speaking about it, people thought I was a total psychopath. And, I just didn't understand how to explain it to them. And so I didn't have very good interaction. So I didn't talk about it to anybody for quite a while, till around, I would say, just before, like maybe end of 2019, I started talking about it a lot. Wanted to get back into the scene, actually wanted to become public about the fact that I'm a Bitcoiner, because I was just talking to my friends and family, no one like on the internet. I didn't want to dox myself yet. But so I got on Clubhouse, spent like 500-600 hours on Clubhouse, hanging with the Cafe Bitcoin people, talking, chatting, building up my understanding of how to explain Bitcoin. Because half the time it's like, you can have a pretty strong understanding of it, but you have to be able to communicate that. Like, you have to be able to use words that other people understand. And it's hard to do that because this shit is so new. Like, we've never done this before. This is 12 years in, and all of us are on this call just trying to figure out how to talk about Bitcoin better. I think personally that's what drives people to get on these things is they want to hear what other people are saying, replicate it, or try out some of the phrases that they've said. So did that. And then eventually people kept telling me to on Clubhouse to start a podcast. So started it, and it's been having a great time ever since.
Yeah, Dennis, what are some of the recent episodes you put out? I saw that you had Alex Gladstein on recently,
Yeah.
right? Who else have you had on?
So I transitioned to video interviews, and the last several video interviews were Alex Gladstein, Jeff Booth is coming out, Alex Svetsky. What's the other one, Jacob?
John Vallis.
Oh, John Vallis. Yeah, I can't forget John.
Did John
Vallis
wear a
was
shirt?
the best. No, he was totally shirtless.
Let's
Yeah,
go.
no shirt.
I was the first one. I think I was the first show he did that on. Actually, I was wearing a suit, so it was suits versus skins. It was pretty funny. I half thought to just rip my shirt off right there and get on his level, but I wasn't brave enough.
That's hilarious. I know. So Christopher and Paul, you guys are running a podcast as well.
Cool.
Tell us a little bit about the podcast before we transition into some Bitcoin talk. I know this isn't really what we were gearing up for, but it's nice to have some other podcasters in here.
I don't run a podcast. Maybe
we're not doing a podcast. We're not doing a podcast. We're working on a project for the hospitality industry, and I'm trying to get some team members on board, like just like you, like-minded individuals, try to bring them on board to build out solutions for Bitcoin, really, and getting people onboarded and making it very user-friendly and UX, UI, because right now I find it's just super hard for people to, and merchants as well, to accept Bitcoin, to understand it. And if you can just simplify it in a way where it's as easy as Facebook or Coinbase, where it's very intuitive, I believe that's the key in getting mass adoption, is just making it so simplified that, you know, your grandma can use it. And, you know, that's what we were talking about all last night. And yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm here. Also here to learn, and, you know, I love the space. And like Paul was saying, you know, I took an MIT course on blockchain a few years ago. I paid $4,000 for it. I learned a lot, but it wasn't as interactive. And in this last week, just being interact with people and network and learn much more by asking Cody questions, by asking everybody questions, it's just brought my level up even higher, you know? So like you guys, I'm trying to figure out ways to explain to what Bitcoin is to people in a very simple way. And it's really about who the person is and relating it to what their life is about. Like, because you're going to explain it different to a restaurant server than you're going to explain it to a business guy, then you're going to explain it to your grandma. So it's all about the approach that you're taking and kind of finding a way to relate it to their experience in life. And that's what I found most beneficial. Like, I used to say tokens and coins. Now I just say points, because people understand points. When I say tokens or coins, it's just like, what are you talking about? If I just say points, they don't know it's tokenized on the back end. And you know, so just talking with people and building this project has been a great experience so far. I can't say enough about it, but I'll let Paul chime in on a little bit if he wants.
I mean, for me, I think the networking and the community is great. I mean, it's I think you get out of this course what you put into it, and you know, even before it even started, I started reaching out to people on LinkedIn, and people like, hey, you know, send me a resume, like you look good, like you could come, you know, join our crypto company or whatever. So like, even before the class started, like the networking was already like, you know, beyond expectations. And I think, you know, by the end of the month, I'll have a job, which is kind of like my goal of taking this course. So. But yeah, I've just been, you know, spending hours and hours just like reading through all the material, and I'm, you know, I got to finish my homework today. But you know, it's great. It's like everybody's like so engaged, and it's fun. Yeah, like I spent 6 hours on those like social calls yesterday, just like talking to, you know, people, and drank 12 beers. So I was a little hungover this morning, but it's been great. So so actually, Alan, I got a question for you. So, you know, look, we've just finished our first week, so we've got a couple more to go, but you know, what advice do you have for us to kind of get the most out of this? You know, what do you wish you had known, you know, at the beginning, now that you guys have finished Palm's crypto course?
So I personally don't have any regrets. Well, I'll take it back. I have one. I should have made more memes. I should have pumped out way more memes on the meme Slack channel. But you hit the nail on the head there. You get as much out of the course as you put in. And I think partly because I was doing the podcast and I'm just like obsessed over Bitcoin, that I just wanted to talk to everybody every hour of the day. I was either on Slack, I was trying to ask questions on Tuesdays and Thursdays in class. I was pretty lucky to at least get 1 or 2 questions out per class. But I knew that the whole point of the class was to network, and that I wasn't just going to take the class and get a job anywhere else. Like I've been very blessed here in the last few weeks to have a couple interviews with some good companies. But the process is ongoing. And so the biggest thing is just make sure you make friends, make connections. I think that's really where Bitcoin shines, and it's in its bear markets. Is you have a lot of the noise clear out, you start have a lot of signal coming in, and you start really meeting the people that are important and that really want to make a difference in the space and can help you. It's a mutual thing. You guys can help each other make a difference in the space.
Great. Is that Moist who's just joined us?
I see Moist just hopped in here.
Infamous, I guess.
Infamous Moist. Need to get him on video here. Give him a second. I'm sure he'll hop on.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to go work out in a little bit. So I'm on my foam roller that's got my video off. You probably don't want to see me kind of rolling around on the floor, but
I mean, I wouldn't mind. I think it'd be kind of funny, but no, I'm just kidding. That's awesome. We got a couple other faces in here, Andy and Steven. Andy, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm always on the move. As everybody knows, I'm always in like moving around in the car, doing something. But I've been
what you got on the
enjoying it,
docket
man.
for today?
Just work and then go back home to kids. So, try to finish part 2 of the homework, reading some of the people's stuff, and it's just been interesting. I love it. That's all I can say. I can't say anymore. Every time I do a little feedback, they're like, what do you want from it? Or do you have any recommendations? I'm just like, no, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, fill out those questionnaire sheets, because Colton will come and find you. He will literally come to your house and beat your door down and put the sheet in front of you and be like, dude, fill this out.
Yeah. It was pretty funny. Day 1, he was like, you know, sorry to do this, guys, but if you could fill out the short survey. So, but
it helps
it's
the
awesome.
class. They listen. Trust me.
Yeah.
Feedback is everything to a business, you know?
Definitely. Well, and it makes the class better for future cohorts. You know, it's an ever evolving thing, just like the space itself is ever evolving. It needs to keep up with the times, and Bitcoin's not waiting for anybody.
Yeah. Feedback is super key, I think, to everything in life. We were talking about this a little bit when we recorded with Alex Vetsky, and the current environment we live in, that there's no true feedback. Like, you know, CPI is a lie, GDP is a lie, the money is fake and corrupt. So you're not getting an accurate feedback. And to me, it's like, you know, when you go put your hand on a hot pot, and people use this analogy a lot, but it works well. You know, you almost remove your hand from the pot before you even feel anything. Like it's almost like an instantaneous reaction. But imagine if that mechanism was slowed down. Instead of having a mild burn, you'd have 3rd-degree burns. You'd hold your hand there longer and longer because you don't realize the pot is burning you. There are people with this actual condition where they will chop off their own fingers on accident and they won't feel it. It's a neurological condition, but that's kind of the market and the environment we're into. Jumping into Bitcoin, might be a good segue, but the current environment we live in is an economy where we're chopping off our own fingers and we're, giving ourselves 3rd-degree burns, and we're making bad decisions. So many bad decisions in a row because you can buy a company that's that's a zombie company. It's underwater in its own debt, but yet the stock price will continue to go up because of the inflation and the buybacks. And in a Bitcoin world, that won't happen. You'll have instant feedback because the money is can't be corrupted. It's a true signal, and so you're getting more accurate. You'll have a more accurate market with accurate signals. And that's important because not only can you avoid making bad decisions like over and over and over again, but you can also get the feedback from the marketplace that you've made a good decision. And then it has a compounding effect upwards. So we were talking about, I think it was one of the best points he made around the future, what the future has to hold on a Bitcoin standard. We're going to be making so many good decisions because of that quick feedback, because you won't drop far down. You'll only drop down a little bit before you're like, oh shit, I'm getting burnt, or I've chopped my finger off. And then instead of that, you're doing the reverse and you're just going straight up through the roof economically. So I think feedback is super important, super vital part of anything we do. It's easier to get feedback when you're on your own. You open a business, your customers don't like something. It's a little easier to get that quick feedback, but the market, as far as money is concerned, as far as stocks, investing in stocks, it's all a lie. Everything you're buying is a lie. So feedback is one of the most important parts of life, knowing whether you're making wrong or right decisions.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. Kind of curious in the room here, since you guys are in the cohort, where is the general level knowledge of understanding of Bitcoin and the rest of the market?
I think it's pretty diverse. I mean, there's obviously, I think most people are probably still pretty new. I mean, kind of seeing when people bought their first Bitcoin. I mean, a lot of people, it's just in the past year. Some people, 2017. I got mine in 2014, so probably one of the older guys. Plus, I'm an old guy anyway. But there's some people who really know their stuff. And, we've got a whole group of people that we're trying to set up, lightning node networks together, and we're learning together. But so there's a wide range of expertise, but I think everybody's very supportive, and I guarantee everybody's knowledge has like 10x just in the past week. So it's been great. I'm looking forward to looking back, at the end of the month and saying, wow, look how far I've come. And, I'm just so motivated to keep learning. Like I woke up at 7 o'clock today to do my homework. Like that's never happened ever, even back in college on a Saturday. So that's how excited I am about, the course.
Yeah, I was the same way. I think the biggest thing too is like you really have to go out of your way to want to get into the course. Because I don't know, Kenny, if you guys are still doing this, but I remember when I signed up for the course, there was like a couple of questionnaires we had to fill out. Then you got to pay to get in yourself. It's not like you're taking out like student loans or anything like that. And it's only a short 3 weeks, and it's like, hey, got to make things happen. I want to get the most out of it. And I feel like that it's created an environment where everybody in it's super passionate to want to learn. And therefore it engages the rest of the class very well. And then when all the coaches do their breakouts and stuff throughout the week, it's awesome.
Hey, Steven here. I'm in Cohort 5. And, I think what's important to understand here is that, the world, where we are in our understanding and knowledge, even it doesn't matter if you're an expert, if you know how to run your own node, if you know how to set up a lightning network, or if you're just learning for the first time the basics and fundamentals of Bitcoin. The important part of a communal class is that you take that knowledge and you share it with others. And what happens is you turnkey that and you share it with people in your personal network. So as we think about the value of a blockchain or Bitcoin or whatever we want to describe it, it's predicated on the amount of people that are aware and have an understanding of the network. So I think there's an assumption that we can draw actually a parallel towards COVID of like, for every person that gets COVID, they're going to spread it to 3 or 4 people. I think the R naught of something like this is you're going to spread it to 3 or 4 people that you trust, that you were a little bit nervous of saying, publicly, of like, hey man, like this is where I think the future is going. This is where I think the world is going. Those thoughts and those ideas that you were lacking a little bit of confidence on and sharing, I think become more to the surface, and you become more aware of, as you talk to people and you understand that, like, hey, maybe I'm not crazy. Actually, maybe this is actually where the world's going. You start to share those ideas, and you have to put faith and trust in that the ideas that you share are going to be shared by those people 3 or 4 networks, 3 or 4 nodes away from you as well. And so what you're doing isn't just predicated on yourself of acquiring knowledge and being early and whatever. It's about spreading the understanding of where the world is, where we think it's going, and not necessarily just like, spewing one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin type of ideas. We know that to be true, but there's far greater implications, I think, of what can happen through courses and communities like this.
Yeah, Stephen, that's a great analogy there, just how Bitcoin is like a virus. I can tell you for a fact that I try to orange pill every new person I come across. We do so I grow microgreens, and we do farmers markets on Sundays. And I've made a habit of going to every little pop-up stand that's around me and being like, hey, did you download the Strike wallet like I told you to last week? Did you download it? And I've got one person so far, but there's like 50 or so other farmers in like the market that are there. But I've been trying to get everybody to like accept sats in exchange of dollars and stuff. So, and I know everybody else too. The first people they go to is their friends, parents. I've got a good chunk of my friends that put a good chunk into Bitcoin, and start reading on top of that. I don't ever like telling people to buy. I tell people, hey, you should read about it first. That's kind of usually how I go. The farmers market's a little bit different, they're merchants. So the tactics kind of change there. But yeah, no, I agree with you. It's Bitcoin in and of itself is such it's the most political, if that makes sense. An oxymoron, I know. It's the most, and Dennis tweeted this out. He's smiling. He tweeted this out like a week ago or so, but I agree with him 100% that it's the most political idea in existence. And when you start getting into that rabbit hole, and I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are in this, especially anybody newer, is that you start realizing that the deeper you get, the more that everything you've ever been taught about money and society and like how everything coexists together is like so messed up. At least that's how I see it. And Bitcoin really fixes a lot of caveats that have been dug deep into us since we started getting off the gold standard in 1918.
Anybody newer that wants to chime in?
No takers. It's interesting though that Stephen, or is it Stephen or Stefan? I can't see the
Stephen.
Looks like Stephen. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, no, it's true though, except I think that it's even more aggressive of a virus at times than what you say is COVID. Everyone that understands Bitcoin, once you get to a certain level, they become highly incentivized to add other members to the network. And you comparing it to a virus is interesting because before COVID, a lot of people actually used to use that as a meme, that Bitcoin is a virus. But I think we kind of stopped doing that for a little while. Got a little, it wasn't the best analogy during a pandemic. So I agree. And I think that it's interesting. I messaged Alan earlier this morning, and I said, you know, Bitcoin is the only thing that will make me give up my Friday night and my Saturday morning to go talk about Bitcoin. Cause you know, I'm on the West Coast, so I have to wake up at 6 a.m. to be on this call. But if I want to talk well about Bitcoin, I have to also go to bed at a good hour, because otherwise I'm going to wake up and I barely function well in the morning as it is. So it's definitely not, I can't do the 12 beers as Paul has done and still function properly mentally. Yeah, but I love that Bitcoin is like a mind virus, and it just takes over you, and it makes you want to do anything you can to spread the good message. You're economically and morally incentivized to do so. And that's the first time human beings have ever been, you know, economically and morally incentivized. You know, you have the church, that's a moral incentive, or you have your job, that's an economic incentive, but now you have them both combined. And that's one thing that makes me like super fucking bullish on Bitcoin.
So it's funny, when I first started getting into crypto, well, investing in general, it was always, you know, everybody tells you save money, save money, save money. And then I would sit with the shock of how much you get in interest with your savings and how much inflation is. So every time I try to talk about crypto, or someone asks me, I always ask them, so you have a savings account or you have a CD? And they're like, yeah. I was like, so how much interest do you make on that? And they're like, oh, you know, like 0.5. And I was like, okay. I was like, you know how much inflation is? And they're like, no. And I tell them, I was like, so your money's locked up and you're actually losing money. And then that's when the wheels start turning from them. And that's what really helped me out. And then that's when I start going into, you know, the whole crypto spiel, and just start viewing it as an asset and things like that.
Yeah, that's a hot take I like to use with a lot of people. Sometimes I'm like, hey, did you know your yearly raise this year didn't outpace inflation, and that you're getting paid less to do the same job you did this year for it? And people are like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're getting paid less. Trust me. Look at the numbers. And yeah, usually the wheels start turning there, but sometimes I'll get pushback and stuff like, well, have my 401k, have the stock market. I have other investable assets like home, land. And I usually tell people, I was talking to is it Dennis, you would know, it's Mike Alfred.
Mike is great. Yeah. What was the question about him though?
It wasn't a question, but he had brought up a point where he was talking about how he still has a lot of his investable assets, some stock derivatives. He still got home and his land, but yeah, since he found Bitcoin, he's been putting anything extra he can invest now straight into Bitcoin. He's still keeping everything else because he's put a lot of time into that, and that's understandable. But a lot of, and Mike, just some background on Mike. Maybe Dennis, you can give a little bit better background on him than I.
Yeah. So Mike was formerly at NYDIG. He created a company, forget the name of it, but it was like a data solutions company for mining. He sold that to NYDIG, and he helped build out their mining arm. So the dude, like, as someone who's like a market guy, like a Wall Street guy, he knows a shocking amount about mining and can talk about it in a completely different way than most people can. You don't really meet very many people that come from that world, that come from the Wall Street, traditional finance world, that get that whole system and why it's rigged, but also, you know, benefited from it, and then also are able to come over and understand and talk about Bitcoin. So he's a great speaker. I'm actually going to have him on my show very soon, and we're doing a bunch of stuff together. We're gonna get on a call and talk to one of the biggest, one of the chief executive officers over at one of the biggest firms in Saudi Arabia, to try to convince this guy that he should buy Bitcoin. But yeah, he's just a really great advocate for Bitcoin. Here we go.
Yeah, we'll
have to tell him. I'll have to tell him we're showing him off.
He would love it. Yeah, no, I'll definitely let him know. Mike's a great guy though. He just had a debate. It was you, Mike, and Portfolio Hawk. I listened to like the beginning of that conversation. But it's very funny. Portfolio and Dennis had been going back and forth for quite a while, and Portfolio was very condescending to a lot of the Bitcoiners. He's like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You guys don't understand markets. I've been in markets for 30 plus years. And then Mike all of a sudden comes in this room and starts talking. He's like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. And all of a sudden Portfolio like quieted down, was like, oh, maybe I should start listening to what this guy's saying.
I think just Mike is much smarter than him in his field. And that's what like caused Portfolio Hawk to just totally melt. Like I had talked to this guy multiple times, but I'm not a market guy. I'm not college educated. I don't have an understanding of the way markets work on a deep level. Like it's very surface level stuff. And so I've had these conversations back and forth all the time, but I can't speak. This is a big problem that I think Christopher was mentioning it earlier, is speaking someone's language, like understanding how to communicate it to them. And when you're someone who spent 20, 30 years trading traditional finance, that's your whole world. Like I'm never going to be able to talk to you or convince you that you should buy Bitcoin. It's actually impossible because I cannot speak your language and I can't answer the questions that you have. So a lot of times you'll notice, and I highly encourage this for anybody that's listening, when you're trying to convince someone and you're just running into a wall, it's actually you. Like you need to bring someone else in. Like you got to hire people that understand their language, bring them on the call. So for instance, I was going to do a call with this guy from Saudi Arabia by myself, but I brought Mike in because he understands all of that world. I don't. And then I also brought in Ben Prentice. If you don't know who Ben is, he's the creator of WTF Happened in 1971, but he has a very strong understanding of economic history. But you got to like gang tackle people. You cannot, if someone's curious, I'm not going to do this for people that don't give a shit, that don't want to learn. But if there's someone that's curious and they're important, that you help convince them about Bitcoin, bring people in with you. Like, don't try to do it by yourself. There's no way you can cover all of their questions and all the ground of the things that they're going to be worried about. So, yeah, so we actually have another debate coming up too. I think there's like two, it's me and Mike and Portfolio Hawk and this other guy. So it'll be interesting for sure.
I see Lawrence is in here. He's the host of Black and Bullish BTC Tuesday on Twitter Spaces, and he's very, very big on educating in the space as well. I'm curious, Lawrence, what your thoughts are on pushing Bitcoin towards newcomers.
What's up, everybody? How we doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good.
What's up, Lawrence?
What's up, fellas? Yeah, but I kind of agree with the sentiment that Dennis was just on. If you're running into walls and things like that, it's always going to be a communication issue. I think the only difference that I have with Dennis is that I think that a lot of people don't give enough effort to try different methods of communication, before they kind of throw their hands up and say, I can't do this. But that suggestion of bringing in somebody who already speaks that language is always the best, because then, the chances that things could be lost in translation are a lot lower. And that's not just a Bitcoin thing. I think that's a human thing. Communication, I think, is the core of almost every problem in every organization you can possibly find in the world. So making sure that messaging coming across, that's both in the way you conduct yourself and in the manner in which you speak, is usually the best way to find success when sending messages to people. So yeah, man, good stuff. I think education, obviously, like I say all the time, is the key. And I think for the educator, a lot of times we just have to think outside the box a bit. Like Dennis was saying, think outside yourselves and just find the best method possible to get that communication across. And, if you seek, you shall find.
What's up, Lawrence? I didn't know who it was until you started speaking your beautiful, deep voice that I'm jealous of. I see you on Spaces all the time.
If you don't stop it, Dennis. You look different absent your laser eyes. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. My voice is probably a little deeper too this early in the morning.
Real quick. Paul's got to jump out real quick. He just wants to make.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I got to go to my fitness class because I told you I drank 12
Proof
beers.
of work, man, for the body. Proof of work for the body.
That's true. So look, I've got a lot of friends who work on Wall Street, and they're like so anti-Bitcoin for so long, and I think once they started seeing, people in the traditional financial services industry start getting into crypto, they're started educating themselves, started asking me questions about it. And I, send them articles to read and things like that. And yeah, you're right. They got to do their own research and kind of read through. And then when the time is right, they'll go all in. And I've got buddies of mine who literally put millions of dollars into Bitcoin, Ether, and they're calling me tell me more about Polkadot and Solana and stuff like that. And I've had to educate them on things like that. So, but yeah, once people kind of, realize what this is all about, even people who are really against it. And I think the people who are really against crypto the most, once they've educate themselves, they're like true believers. So I'll just leave you guys with that. I gotta roll out, but I'll be back next
next
Saturday
week.
morning.
Awesome,
Hopefully less
Paul.
hungover.
Hey, that's never a bad thing. As long as you were talking about Bitcoin the night before, I'll let it slide.
All right. Take care, guys. Have a good day.
See you, Paul.
See you, man.
Like he was kind of saying it, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. You know what I mean? So I've gotten so many people that I've talked to over in the past where I've led them to the water. They never took that sip, but over the last year, they've gone ahead and taken that sip. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a waiting game. Like you can implement it in their mind, but until they see that door open themselves, or there's something that gives them that aha moment. And I've had a lot of friends that have had it over this past year with seeing the movement and everything that's going on and reaching out. I can't tell you how, because I post, like I repost memes on Instagram all the time, and all my friends now that have seen me doing that over the last 3 or 4 years are reaching out like, hey, and all I do is I send them the Bitcoin standard book. I said, once you read this, then I'll be able to talk to you, because I'm not going to tell you when to buy, what to buy, anything like that. You really just have to understand the space yourself and then determine how you want to make investments for yourself, because it's all about self-sovereignty. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You need to be able to learn that yourself. And if you have questions, I'll be happy to lead you in the right direction. But some people, it's just about them discovering that aha moment as well. You can bang your head against the wall as much as you want, even if it's your best friend. But sometimes it's just something they need to experience in their life that has them open that door.
Yeah, the hardest thing for me to accept was that I'm not going to be able to convince everybody of what's happening. And some people are going to hop on late, and some people are never going to hop on at all. And that's just how, as Kenny has always said, that Bitcoin creates a system of fairness, not a system of equality. And that's just, there's going to be losers in it. And that's just how a fair, open market economy works. But I know as long as I've said and tried and pushed them towards resources and education materials, and they still push back and say no, at some point you just got to be like, sorry, man, I tried to help you. Don't come back to me saying I didn't warn you, didn't try to talk to you.
Yeah, and yeah, I think to go along with that, everyone has to realize that self-sovereignty, as was brought up by Chris, I think as well, is your choice. You vote with your feet, and that's what's brilliant about it is that there's no the mainstream's not going to tell you what to do. Your mom and dad aren't going to tell you what to do. You have the choice to, again, vote with your feet. And going back a little bit, I think to kind of education and helping people to understand what digital assets are and where the world is going, is if anyone tells you that they know all the answers and they can explain it in perfect English or they can explain it perfectly, is full of shit, because this is a newly formed asset class. This is in its infancy. No one actually knows. I don't know. You don't know. No one here knows what the end goal or end game of Bitcoin or any digital asset is going to be. Quite frankly, the US and China and the EU can form a joint agreement tomorrow that can severely restrict and kind of put everyone behind the 8 ball that owns any sort of digital assets if they really wanted to. We don't know where the end point is. We don't know where the end game is going. So for anyone to tell you that they can educate you better than you can educate your own self is kind of lying. So that self-sovereignty isn't just limited to what you value or what you value a digital asset to be at. It's really your true beliefs about where you believe the world is going, and then acting in a certain way that aligns with those viewpoints. So that's where I think that rub and that kind of friction is created is around this. Like, we're all learning together. We're all at different points, but we can all vote with our feet. And that's what's so brilliant about it. No one is telling us what to do. We could all be wrong. We could all be sitting here in a Zoom chat 15 years from now going like, wow, how stupid were we? Like, can you believe we were on Zoom chats in 2021, like debating like, how crazy this Bitcoin idea was? That is a possible outcome. And we just don't know at this point in time. but we all have permission to make those decisions. That's what's so amazing.
I will confidently speculate that this will not die.
Yeah, I think
On this.
a good way to think of it is like Bitcoin is definitely not a $30,000 asset. It's either a $0 asset or multi-millions of dollars. Like I can say that confidently. I think we'd all agree with that. And so we're at this really interesting point.
If for
The market just has to wake up and realize for sure. Go ahead, Moist.
If for some reason it fails, someone's going to try again. Like knowing what we know now about Bitcoin and how great it can be for the world, if for some reason it doesn't work out, which I think is very unlikely, someone's going to try and make a new one. Like we're going to have to run it back.
Well,
we can't keep with the fiat.
Yeah, definitely, Moist. You're spot on there. And the reason why I don't think it could ever die, I think it's very hard for people like us who live in the US or any of the G7, G8 nations, where we're very fortunate to have access to banking, have access to monetary tools that are current in our fiat system, that we don't really understand the use case of Bitcoin in an emerging market economy, third world economy type setting. And we're seeing this right now play out in places like El Salvador, where they're not really the big issue for them, and why wealth is so hard to generate there is that the banking infrastructure is not there to bank a majority of your population. When that happens, you can't collect taxes. There's no body to pay out goods and services. It's very peer-to-peer orientated. And in the world we live in that's digital and operates very quickly, those people fall behind quicker. And now with Bitcoin being free and open source, and Jack Mallers has been very keen to seeing the opportunity at hand, is that he can now bring banking to all these people who are unbanked. And there's no limitation. All they need is just a connection to the internet. That's all they need. And it's very easy.
Yeah, Alan, I've lived for the last 6.5 years in Vietnam. And I've traveled extensively through the developing world. And you come to Bitcoin for the upside and the money, but then you start playing the game theory out in your head of, what does wealth creation look like in the developing world? And you realize it doesn't exist. And that's not like, I didn't read this on Reddit. I didn't read this on fucking Twitter. You see this with your own eyes of how do people store wealth? They don't trust their government. They don't trust their banking system. They don't have a bank account. If they have the ability to, they invest in real estate. People's life savings are stored away in rent collecting. If they have the means to do that. If they don't, they live paycheck to paycheck. They don't have an ability to store wealth, to save wealth. They don't trust their currency. You go on Facebook, you go on Instagram, you see ads blatantly that are Ponzi scheme investment ads that are out to rent seek and take money away from people who are trying to honestly build for their family and build for their future. When you see that day to day, when you talk to people and when you engage people I ask people the simple question, how do you save money? What do you, how do you support your family? And you hear these crazy ideas. And my reply is, have you heard of Bitcoin? Oh, yes. I've heard it's dangerous. I've heard it's, criminal. I've heard it's bad for the environment. You hear the base layer, arguments against it. And I don't try to evangelize people. I think when you try to evangelize people and overwhelm them, you come off as a used car salesman. But when you tell people that there's a different reality, and I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you have the opportunity to research, to learn, to read, to take advantage of a mobile phone that's sitting in your pocket and learn for yourself, because that's how I did it. That's how you did it. That's how all of us have did it. We all came here largely through what we were able to accomplish on our own. And you see that reality for people, and not everyone's going to believe you, but I think I feel satisfied of at least providing people the pathway, that there's an out here that anyone can participate in. And that's what's so brilliant about it. Anybody can participate, not you or I, not a select class, not a credentialed class, everyone.
Yeah, and what we're talking about kind of reminds me of a speech I heard from Andreas a few years ago, in terms of the only real scarcity in the world is not Bitcoin, it's attention. And God forbid there's a way that the governments or anything are able to manipulate Bitcoin to a way where they're able to take over 51% or print enough money to buy enough Bitcoin to be able to control it in a way. You can always fork, because it's about the attention of the community. So even though there's the original Bitcoin blockchain may be corrupted or has that potential to be corrupted, the community decides with their attention which way to go. So he compared it to the internet and gentrification of Brooklyn, where he was living. And all these job boards back in the early 90s would, they were very fringe. They talked about a lot of out there things and porn, and remember internet in the 90s. And as businesses came in, they started to clean it up and put a tie and suit on it and make it presentable and family friendly. And all those people left those groups and they started their own protocol. So he kind of made it's not really Bitcoin that can be destroyed, it's the attention of the community that believes in the freedom behind it. So I just wanted to put those 2 cents out there, because what we were talking about kind of just sparked that speech that he had spoke about, and wanted to share it with you guys.
Yeah, I think the beauty of the Bitcoin network, like you said, in a doomsday type scenario, is what I always think about, is that, yeah, if the protocol were to become so corrupt, you could fork. I think it's very unlikely, though, given the fact that, as we were talking about earlier, that you guys in the class right now are learning about installing and creating your own nodes. And as long as like the education's there to have people everybody run their own node, everybody keeps their own node up to date and in sync with the blockchain, the odds of anybody centralizing all the decisions and just implementing any new updates in and of itself, having all the miners signal for it, there's just so many moving parts that, while a lot of people like to point at Bitcoin Core as like its biggest downfalls, that it's so slow to innovate, I always argue, I'm like, no, that's what makes it so decentralized and the most secure chain on the network, is that any decision or change that has to be made is made because it's critical for its functionality and for its operability as money for everybody. They're not going to implement any BS change like Ethereum's constantly doing with EIP 1555 or whatever other changes that they like. I mean, just rolling back the blockchain, all the stuff, like there's no like, if Bitcoin messes up, it messes up for everybody. It's a fair system. There's nobody at the top that can benefit from any sort of change of the sorts. Sorry, I'm starting to ramble on there, but real quick, I want to touch with Stephen. Are you still in Vietnam?
I am actually in Hong Kong now.
Gotcha. Okay.
But once again, I'm in a quarantine hotel 2 doors down from Xinhua News. So, again, the idea of Bitcoin and freedom and sovereignty and not being able to move your hard-earned assets in places once again plays out, I think, in a more sophisticated, more ruthless society. But I think, and apologies for rambling, but having seen the developing world for 6.5 years and understanding what that looks like, I think is a powerful. It was it comes from your own 2 eyes. You come for the money, you philosophize, then you actually play it out in the real world and start asking questions, and you actually see that these aren't a bunch of like tech bros, getting high off their own supply of watching dollar go up and getting rich. It's real.
Yeah, I was only asking too. I didn't realize Hong Kong's still in quarantine. I know Vietnam just went through another lockdown, so I was gonna say, I'm with you there.
Yeah, I just flew into Hong Kong 5 days ago, so it's a mandatory 2-week quarantine. So as you can see my unique hotel room, this isn't how I would actually design my apartment with kind of odd windows and glass in the background. I'm not that cool to
I wasn't gonna say anything until you said you were I assumed you were in Vietnam, but now you say in Hong Kong both. I'm like, okay, it makes a little bit more sense on the background there. But yeah, I think those are all very valid points. Like you said, until you're on the ground and see how Bitcoin operates in the humanitarian perspective and how it can benefit a lot of these people throughout the world. Actually, you could arguably say the majority of the world. It really opens and changes your mind. I think a lot of people are now finally kind of bringing that to light, which is critical for the space. The other thing too, because of that, I mean, it is a bottom up movement. You're not going to see, although we kind of leapfrogged a little bit with El Salvador and having Bukele instituted as like legal tender and everything, it's still very bottom up. I mean, all these communities are popping up saying, hey, we want to we can use Bitcoin here because it's easier for whatever it may be, the remittance payments or inflation of the currency is so high, or they just don't have access to banking. There's a multitude of reasons why a emerging market community would want to utilize Bitcoin.
And, as Cody was talking on this, I believe last night, or was it you, Kenny? I forget. It's not more of a bottom up, but a top down and a bottom up flanking kind of the middle class, because you do have, the lightning payments, which are going to be done by, plebs like us and merchants and everything, and smaller amounts. But then you also do have, if, the government start putting it on the reserve as, as the reserve as having some money, it's also coming down from the top as well. Because if they start implementing that as a national reserve, so now you have countries using it and you have the normal people using it, you're kind of, I forget who said it was, is you have all these middle-class millionaires that are like, I've got my USD, and they kind of just started to fizzle out. So I thought that was a pretty cool analogy, that it's, they're kind of flanking from both angles.
Yeah, Chris, can I jump in? And then I'm going to go to bed. Actually, I'm pretty exhausted. I think you're absolutely right. I think it harms that intellectual yet idiot class, like that Paul Krugman New York Times reading type of class that, has the IQ of 120, that went to, a top 50 private university in the US, that makes $145,000 a year, that lives in a house that's, gone up 40% in the last 12 months. And they're sitting there thinking they're fucking brilliant, thinking that, I've got my cushy employment. I've got my IRA, I've got my retirement funds, I'm important in life. I've got these 7 credentials. I'm working on my 8th fucking credential. I think those are the people that are the most resistant to a transformation of the world being analog and very credential driven and being very conveniently driven for their interests, into a world where it's a true fucking meritocracy now. Like, your diploma, it doesn't mean shit. Your job title, sure, that means something based off of the amount of dollars you make, but does it really mean as much as it comforts your ego? So I think those people are going to be the most resistant. And I think you're already seeing it. I think you're seeing it in the mainstream media. You are seeing this media narrative driven towards any sort of digital innovation, whether it's Bitcoin. I think you're going to see it towards, and I know there are some Bitcoin maximalists. I'm not personally, but I'm a digital asset maximalist. I think we are recreating the world.
You will be. Give it 2 more weeks.
I'm gonna convert you.
Yep.
Don't worry.
I'm fine in my beliefs. I'm cool with that. But we're all on the same team. But we are watching the world recreate itself on the digital sphere. And these people, where the analog world has worked out very conveniently for them, myself included. Listen, the world has worked out in the analog way very conveniently, but the inability for people to see the next 20 to 40 years of where the world is actually going. And I think it's going to happen sooner than later. It's going to be quicker than slower. And I think the resistance that you're seeing in the mainstream media, they're contriving every narrative that Bitcoin is energy conducive. Bitcoin is used for drugs. It's used by dangerous people. It's used by criminals. It's not backed by governments. It's not backed by fucking Joe Biden or Angela Merkel or whoever the hell you wanna consider as important in the world. You're seeing these media narratives play out, and I think that's going to escalate in the next 12 to 18 months. I think you're going to see Bitcoin on the front page of the New York Times once a month for the next 18 months, and none of it's going to be good. And every time that Bitcoin appears on the front page of the New York Times in a negative media narrative and the price drops, you fucking buy more, because I think these people, it's a grasp for power. It's an discomfort for where the world is going, and it's an admission that they are losing control of what they value, and that's valuing the narrative, that's valuing how they can dictate how the world operates. But I will warn you, revolutions are fucking ugly, man. This is not this is not a linear, this is not a clean, like, hey, we're all gonna fucking, create songs and play the guitar and throw roses at each other as this happens. This is gonna be ugly. And in some ways, you're gonna lose friends, you're gonna lose relationships, you're gonna not want to reveal this information in public, because it's not gonna be linear, it's not gonna be pretty. And on that, I'm gonna head to bed.
For sure, Stephen. Thanks for joining us. All great points. I'm writing down right now for next week to convert you over to the good side, the true Bitcoiner way. But all valid.
Can't be in the middle,
points.
Bro. You gotta pick. You gotta pick a side.
Gotta
man.
pick a side here.
Yeah, that holds shitcoins too.
But thanks for joining, Stephen. Man, you have a good night, and I look forward to seeing you next week. But he brought up some good points there, with the top 50 university, $145,000 mortgage, riddled in debt, high time preference individual that's so committed because they're high time preference. That's a big thing. The further I've gotten down the rabbit hole, my time preference has lowered dramatically just for personal goals, familial goals, and just career type goals. It's just like my time frame reference for everything is just like, it's not today, it's not tomorrow, it's not next month, it's not even next year. It's like, let me take the steps so I can better myself in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100%. This is the first time in my entire life that I speak in years. Like, everything in life right now, it's always been, what can I get now? I mean, we even do all this crazy reporting, like on the stock market, like quarterly reports. Like, that's a ridiculous time frame to be able. Some people have said we should even get away from that because it's such a short time frame, and it forces these businesses to have to, deliver on these reports or suffer the consequences. I really love that Bitcoin expands my time horizon, just because I've always had a problem with that. I've always had a problem with being patient and waiting. And now it just seems natural. I have no problem, creating a podcast and waiting to the next halvening for it to actually become something successful. That's basically the comfort I get from looking at that cycle is other people have gone before us and done it. So it's been really de-risked to some degree to be out there, to be super public about your status as a Bitcoiner. I take a different approach from Stephen. I don't think that we're going towards a dark and tumultuous time, although that is possible. It's an outcome that we need to be prepared for and mentally prepared for specifically, and also have yourself ready to, if you got to get out of the country, have your understanding of how to do that without having your Bitcoin taken away from you. But I don't see that. I see a much brighter future. I think that Bitcoin incentivizes everyone, including our enemies, to be a part of the network. You have people like, Jamie Dimon and this guy that I'm going to do a call from Saudi Arabia. They're like, well, I don't believe in Bitcoin, but I'll sell it to my customers. I'm like, well, you just lost. It's game over now. You're adopting Bitcoin. You're using it. You're interacting with the technology. For instance, now we have this lady, Aarika Rhodes. She's running against Brad Sherman in California's 30th district. Brad Sherman came out vehemently against Bitcoin, so we should ban Bitcoin and we need to totally get rid of it. And he's a pro CBDC guy. Well, now all of a sudden her, fledgling campaign, which is, maybe she would have had a chance to do some body damage on him, but now all of a sudden she's getting national attention. There's millions of dollars that are potentially going to be put into this campaign from various people around the world that, it's not me. I'm not doing any of this. It's people that want to take down Brad Sherman, because Bitcoin by its very nature is defensive. If you attack Bitcoin, it strikes back. The cyber hornets will always come for you.
Yeah, I mean, look what's happening. Bukele, the president of El Salvador, posted a tweet yesterday, and it was in Spanish. So Alan, you have to tell me what it said, but I saw some of the reactions, and I think we all agree that it gets taken too far sometimes. Like, there are a lot of people who proclaim themselves as Bitcoin maximalists who are just assholes, and they would be assholes if they were vegans. They would be assholes if they were CrossFit people. They just happen to be Bitcoin maximalists, and they use it as a reason to be an asshole. But the Bitcoin immune system is very strong. And if you don't do if you do something against the values that we align ourselves with, that's it, no matter who you are.
Yep. That's exactly true. Some people will say that they don't like it, but I think it's 100% necessary. You need this system in order to weed out scammers. You need a system in order to make sure that the person next to you is on your team and on your side. Yes. Does the autoimmune system overreact at times? Of course it does. Everybody's autoimmune system can overreact, but that doesn't mean you take a medicine to kill your autoimmune system. Right? Like, what are we showing up here? Oh, is this the one about him saying for the vaccinations?
Maybe, so he's saying here
okay, go ahead.
So he's saying here, number one, he said you should present your card of vaccination and shown complete that you have both doses. Remember that if you falsify any documents, the penalty for this would be prison. And this goes against the health of public safety. We have the capacity to get everybody vaccinated in both states in one day. There's no excuses. And then here, what his Secretary of Communications is saying, they're announcing that all the sports events are only going to let people in that had been vaccinated. Anybody who hasn't been cannot attend sports events. So for me, and then my buddy here, he goes, my friend Lucas, he's in Vietnam, and he hits the nail on the head right here. He goes, this mandate aligns poorly with Bitcoiner freedom ethos. And he goes, Alan, are you changing your plans now? My plans being that my wife and child and I are planning on moving down to El Salvador by the beginning of next year. And her and I have made the one stipulation we had that would stop us from doing anything like that would be having to vaccinate ourselves or vaccinate my child. More worried about my son because of all the studies that have now come out against the risks of vaccinating a young person. And it goes against, like you said, the Bitcoiner ethos is like, look, like, if you want to get the vaccine, I have no problem with you getting the vaccine. But the whole, and I've never been, and I'm not an anti-vax person. This also, by definition, isn't a vaccine. It's a form of gene therapy, and you can talk to any doctor about that. Regardless, the fact that they're forcing it upon people is like, okay, so he's accepting the freest, soundest, truest money in the world, but yet he's still throwing this like dictator, authoritarian type mandate. And I'm like, is this because he doesn't want to get whacked like the president of Haiti? And I know we're getting kind of tinfoily hat here, but it's like, okay, we don't know exactly how these things are going to play out. Our move is still about a year away. Oh yeah, Moist has a good point. It's going to get taken off of YouTube now.
Yeah, right.
Great.
Hey man, I think we should have the conversation anyways.
Like, here's the thing. Like, I agree with a lot of what you say. It's just that if you look at some of the numbers there, and you're a leader, like, it feels, I could see someone thinking that they feel like this is a necessary thing to protect the people. Just, it's the same motivation he had to adopt Bitcoin and force people to accept Bitcoin. Like, some people complained about that. But what do you expect in a third world country that like honestly has had horrible governments throughout past, has horrible civil wars? He's not perfect. No one's perfect. I've done things people in this room would agree with. Everybody's done something in their life that, you know, other people don't like or wouldn't agree with. I think it's important to remember that you can make a good decision as, and I'm not saying he's a dictator, but as like someone who is on that level of like having that much power and control over the government and adopt Bitcoin. It doesn't mean you're going to wake up tomorrow and be, you know, freedom loving maximalist and, you know, go towards sovereign individual for your whole country like overnight. Like it's not gonna change someone that quickly. I don't think it should change someone that quickly. If people change too quickly, I think it shows a lot of instability. So I think it's important to remember that he can make bad decisions and still be, you know, making good decisions around Bitcoin and moving his country in the right direction. Whether or not you think the vaccine thing is a good or bad decision, but you know, some other things he's done is he brought the military in to the actual Congress, to their house. I don't know what it's called. It's probably a different term, but he brought like the military into Congress to intimidate people to vote for a finance bill. So it's like, my parents have lived there for 7 years. Like he's not a dictator, but he's on the verge. Like he's done a lot of things that make it seem like he could, you know, go in that direction. He has tendencies.
He's got
I don't know
sitting member of the House or Congress or whatever. He's got their resignation letters ready too. If they step out.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the dude has so much power. Like, but at the same reason, that's why he was able to do the thing with Bitcoin, right? Same thing with Michael Saylor. Total control over that company, absolute control. You could say the same thing about Elon Musk. There's no way that you can like get a corporation, a massive, you know, publicly traded company or a full country to do this sorts of stuff unless someone has too much power. Well, guess what? They're going to use that power in other ways that you don't agree with, right? Like for instance, Michael Saylor, people don't like the mining council stuff. Like no Bitcoiner is ever going to be perfect and make perfect decisions that you always agree with all the time. They're going to do stuff that you really don't like.
I don't disagree with you, but the vaccine one's an interesting one. And the reason why I say that is I know Bukele has had an extensive and numerous amount of conversations with Jack Mallers. And for his decision making, and I get it. I know that the man's in a position of power. He's running a country. I think his decision comes from a place of we need to fix a lot of problems. And in order to fix a lot of problems, there needs to be somebody that makes decisions, and some of those decisions are hard. But the vaccine one just seems they've been kind of lax about it up until they've been like, hey, everyone should get their vaccine. If you come into the country, you need to show double negative test or that you've been vaccinated. And now all of a sudden, after the Bitcoin announcement, he's like, and then the Haitian president's died. He's like, you all need to get the vaccine now. You know, it's like, what kind of trouble is he in? You know, because the IMF was upset. You know, his loans, any loans or repayment loans that he's taken out through the IMF are now currently at risk. And they need the fact of the matter is that as much as I like to say Bitcoin fixes everything, like he still needs his dollars as it stands right now. He still needs his loans.
You have to remember too, it's not exactly, you know, he's talking about sporting events. Yeah, it's going in a direction that a lot of Bitcoiners don't like, but it's not like he's busting doors down and forcing vaccinations on everybody. I mean, a lot of countries are doing this. I know in the United States we're not. We tend to be more like, you know, freedom of choice.
Too many guns.
Heavily.
There's too many guns.
But like a lot of countries are doing this. So even if I know people don't like it, but this is going to be normal. Like especially in these third world countries where, you know, they feel like it's a big threat. And I don't like it either. I'm not a fan. Just to be clear, I'm not a fan of mandated vaccinations. Like I don't agree with that. But at the same time, I'm not surprised that he made the decision.
No, neither am I. No, I kind of assumed it was coming, and that's why I wanted to wait a little bit, because I was like, I know this is on the verge of happening. It's just a matter of time. But I was like, I need to see it play out and be implemented before I move out of the country into another country where I have no rights or legal protections.
I mean, you're moving to a third world country, dude. Like it's anything can happen. But also at the same time, you know, you're an American citizen. I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to, take a COVID test and fly back to the United States, pretty much, show you that you're negative because you have to do that for pretty much any international travel at this point. You have to show negative tests. I mean, there are some countries that don't require it, but it's becoming very, very, very normal. So I'm assuming that's going to happen if you want to come back to the United States. Christopher is wanting to say something.
No, my sister-in-law just came in from Russia. She had a flight booked. There was something wrong with her test. The name was in Russian, but they wanted it printed in English, so they didn't let her on the flight. That was in Russia. So she gets the whole test done again, gets it put in English. She comes over to America, ready to present her documents to everybody. Nothing. They're letting anybody in America right now without any tests.
Oh, I've heard the system is fucked. Yeah, like they're not actually like enforcing a lot of stuff for sure. I agree with you, but they are saying that it's a requirement. But yeah, I know I have someone else the other day. He was telling me a story that same thing. Like there was something wrong with the test, and they just didn't even care. They just let him through.
And then you're gonna wonder why the variant is just spreading. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I will say, like, I would love to just jump topics just because I'm not a big fan of like going deep on this issue. It's highly divisive, and we could get stuck going back and forth on our perception and our thoughts around it. I don't think anybody really wants to tune into a Bitcoin podcast and listen to us rant about COVID for an hour straight. But I think it's an important, as the El Salvador point is good to talk about. But I'd love to hop on to something more Bitcoin related, talk about what Bitcoin is actually doing for El Salvador, where it's giving people what Stephen was saying earlier. It's actually giving people access for the first time ever for a way to store their wealth. They don't have access to stock markets. They don't have the ability to buy real estate. So now for the first time in their lives, they have the ability to store their wealth safely, effectively. And I think that's going to have incredible, beautiful ramifications for that country.
I hope they're not relying too much on that government wallet. I hope they're learning more about Bitcoin and putting it somewhere else, because you can never really trust the state. Like if they're keeping their Bitcoin in the government wallets, they could take that back at any moment.
I think the wallet's being developed in conjunction with Strike.
I'm not sure about that.
It's its own wallet, government owned, controlled. They're obviously working with I think they're working with the development team of Strike, but it's custodial. The reason why they're doing that is, which I do kind of agree with, is that they don't want to, force people to use this new technology, and also at the same day force them to, be writing their seeds down and making sure they're not losing it. So what they've done is they've created like a secondary ID system, so that way you can call, like if you lose access to your wallet, you can call customer service, give them your PIN, show your ID, and you can regain access to your wallet. I think a lot of people are going to do that. I don't like custodial stuff, but at the same time, like when you add 2 million people onto the Bitcoin network, if you decide to do it with seed phrases, like you're probably going to have at least 10% of those people screw it up, because they don't even want to do this shit. They're just doing it to get the free money, right? Like,
yeah, they're giving out how many sats for downloading the wallet? It's like
$30 at the time of sign up.
So maybe instead of talking about COVID, we could segue into Bitcoin with what, if these lockdowns and these mandates keep getting stronger, because I know California just implemented masking again inside in LA. If they start like here in America, let's say things start closing down again, what do you think that's going to do for Bitcoin? What do you think is going to happen with Bitcoin?
I mean, it will drop.
To be honest, I don't think they could get away with that again, though. Like the red states aren't going to close down, even if the government, like the federal government, says that they have to. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, well, I never thought the whole country would shut down either, and
I didn't either. Yeah,
and it happens, slowly, then suddenly, all of a sudden, kind of like we're talking about with how when COVID first happened, it all happened within like a 2 or 3 day period. It's like March Madness was shut down, then Disney World was shut down, and then all of a sudden everybody was in, I don't want to see that happen again.
There's actually an incentive to keep the economy slowed and to not let it fully open back up, and that's to keep the velocity of money down. Because if the velocity of money picks up significantly in this country, there's so much freaking money in the marketplace that inflation would absolutely explode. And we're already seeing inflation go up, and we're not really fully back to where we were pre-COVID. We're not back to this place where everybody's spending, the restaurants are full. Like I know we see some of that, we see pockets of it, but certain restaurants I walk by, they're still closed. They haven't reopened yet. Certain businesses aren't operating. That's why you see this inflation starting to set in, though, is because we do have that happening. We already had 5.4% increase in CPI. And that's what the CPI number, which CPI is a bullshit metric in the first place. But we have labor shortages. We have all these problems. So it's, if we decide to just be like, yeah, let's just open this shit wide open right now, everything's open, everybody mentally feels it's okay to start spending, you could see velocity of money pick up, and you could see hyperinflation set in. And so there could be an incentive to use a crisis to stave off inflation, because they're really out of tools. They can't do anything. They can just keep printing more money. But inevitably, you got to print so much money that, like, you wake up tomorrow and, you know, your currency's been debased by 10%. Like, that would not be good for America, because Americans still really have strong confidence in the dollar despite everything that's going on, because it feels stable to them. You know, you can look at the M1, you can look at the M2, but the reason why it hasn't hit our wallets, you know, maybe a little bit, is because of the fact that nobody's spending anything yet. As soon as that picks up, it's game over. So they have an incentive to close us down again, to keep the economy from exploding and into hyperinflation.
I agree. I think they're kind of manipulating, like they're trying to do with the money printing. I think it's another excuse to, you know, slow things down. That's a great point.
They have no other options.
Maybe you could, I'm a little bit ignorant on the velocity of money conversation.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, all they're doing is buying time. And regardless if they were to open up the floodgates or just buy time, the end result is still the same, and we get to this hyperinflation state, correct? Or does buying time somehow correct the problem?
When you say buying time, what do you mean by that?
Slowing down the velocity of money. So
by closing, because I've been saying this for a while, that regardless of opinions around whether we should shut down, there's an economic incentive to keep people from spending too much money. They've put too much money in the marketplace, and if they were to open up too quickly, people would start spending money too quickly, and the cost of everything would explode, like absolutely explode. You already see it in certain marketplaces where the labor shortages are the highest. So lumber was hit really hard. There was no demand for lumber, so everybody stopped cutting it. But now nobody wants to go back to work because they're on government subsidies, so they don't have to work necessarily. Although that's changed. That started to get better, right? They say it's transitory. I think the Fed is going to I think they're really trying to keep this thing like super long as possible. They're talking 2-3 years before they start really changing things. It's like they said it could be 2-3 years before they raise rates in any significant way. That's 2
to 3 years before they start thinking about it.
Yes,
I think was the actual. So it's like now they're making statements about they're thinking about when they're going to think about it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's fucking crazy. So they
know.
can't raise rates. Yeah, they can't raise rates right now because we have so much debt that if we raise rates, we won't be able to pay our debt, and we'll be defaulting on our loans.
I just thought of something interesting. Have you guys seen that Janet Yellen is prepared to speak on stablecoins on Monday, I think?
I didn't see that, but I knew somebody was prepared to speak about it, because there's been a lot of talk about how there needs to be a lot of regulations put on these stablecoins.
Well, there was something, I think, a week or two ago, and then I think it prompted Janet Yellen's attention, and she just announced that I haven't really looked into it, but I think this conversation around stablecoins is really interesting, especially with the ECB, announcing they're moving forward with the CBDC. I'm really curious to see. I think in the long term, none of this shit fucking matters. But I think it's just interesting that like attention's being put heavily on this stuff now.
I'm trying to look here and see what I can see.
Trying to find
the first thing that pops up is pretty funny. Maybe it's because my Twitter's full of Bitcoin, but I'll show you here. It's a post from Bitcoin Magazine.
Yeah,
that was kind of funny. But the second thing is a post from Pomp just saying U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that she believes we'll see several more months of rapid inflation. No shit.
Yo, he's a wild looking person. I'm not trying to be mean, but here's maybe.
Cut out there, Kenny. Yeah,
you can't. They can't start spending too much. That's the big problem. So that's what the velocity of money is. For those that don't know, it's just it's a metric that measures how often a single unit of money is being traded or spent. So like it shows how often we are spending money. So it's the lowest it's ever been in American history, recorded history, and it's like way far down. Like you should go look at. I think I have a tweet right here about it actually that I'll just retweet it, and then you guys can see the number.
You can share it if you want.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah, okay. You should be able to screen share on there.
Okay.
Alan, I just dropped a link.
I'll put it in
just for when we get up to the next topic. I just dropped the link to Caitlin Long's Twitter. That's where I saw about it, and then she linked to the Treasury website. So
okay, I'll pull it up here real quick.
There's the one that I put down there is the velocity.
I'll pull that one up too. Is this the thread right here? Kenny?
One more down. That's her pin tweet. Yeah.
The pin tweet? Okay.
No. The one below.
The one below it. I got you.
Yeah. So that's where I saw it, but I actually didn't click through to the link. But
it says, holy cow, this is happening Monday. That's wicked fast. Keep a close watch on this. And she's referring to Janet Yellen. What's she going to announce? Convene a meeting of the president's working group on financial markets to discuss stablecoins. Today, Janet Yellen announces plans to convene, yada, yada. In addition.
Well, they're going to want to shut. Yeah. They're going to shut it down. They want CBDCs. They don't want this. They don't want these people controlling.
The interesting thing is, I always kind of envision the way that it would play out is that they would kind of partner with one of these more regulated companies like Circle on the CBDC. I just don't see who the fuck is going to build it. Who that's technologically savvy enough to build something like a CBDC would want to go to build it. It's just like, no, anyone that can build something like that is going to go work on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's exactly right.
I always just in my mind was like, well, the only way is kind of work with a company like Circle where they would probably be open to it because they would have the financial incentive to do it and then kind of build on top of what they've already put together. So, I mean, who knows?
I mean, look at construction in America. Anytime something needs to be built, they put that to a third party. It's not like you have the American government building roads. So why reinvent the wheel, like you said, and build a CBDC from scratch where they have no idea on how to do it or be able to get those engineers and just kind of take over what people are already using? Not take it over, but kind of, work with Circle. I think that's, when I heard Circle was going to be regulated, that was one of the first things I thought was, American government's probably going to try to want to work with them because they're not going to want to build this themselves.
I'm super excited for CBDCs, and not for the reason a lot of people think. It's just the way the game theory is always played out in my head is it's just such a Trojan horse for Bitcoin. And it's the same argument that I have, like, well, if someone can do a 51% attack, and I'm like, the financial incentive is so great that it would make more sense to just set up a mining operation to mine Bitcoin, or in the same way that, like, there's no reason to kill the network of Bitcoin because it's not a big enough threat yet. And by the time it becomes a big enough threat, it makes more sense to just adopt Bitcoin, and then the same thing's going to happen with these stable coins is like you introduce them now, great. You've just incentivized the entire population to understand and learn about digital money. Well, guess what they're going to find? They're going to go find fucking Bitcoin, and they're going to realize that whatever crap shitcoin you're putting out it's no better than the dollar that you have right now. And not only that, now you're giving me $1 that you can take away from me at any time. Tell me where I have to spend it, and also track who and where and the places I'm going to.
What you can spend it on.
And when.
People will really.
How quickly. Right. That's a way to solve the velocity of money problem. Right. They say, hey, you know what? You can't spend right now. You got to wait a week.
It's a smog. It's like a smog warning. They're like, okay, we're going to cut off spending for everybody for 30 minutes to an hour, maybe 2 days. Who knows? Or like in what was it in Mexico? They had this program where they wanted to cut the smog. So they picked certain license plates numbers and it's like a don't drive. You can't drive today if you have this license plate number. Well, people just ended up buying a second beater car so they could drive anyways. And the beater cars had even worse like smog pollution. So it made the work problem so much more worse. They don't think about this stuff though. They never think about the second and third order impacts of the decisions that they make. They always are thinking, oh, well, we'll just control what people do. But guess what? There's a money out there where it's completely permissionless. And you're doing a giant advertising campaign for why permissionless money is so important.
Right. Like
here's the velocity of money chart.
We thought this past year with the crazy printing was an advertising campaign for Bitcoin. Just wait until we start moving into CBDC territory, right?
Yes.
And that's the thing about an open network. There's no fucking marketing team. You don't need one. We're all the marketing team.
Right. Well, and that's like one of my favorite arguments against some of these shit coins. I'm like, if you have a marketing team for your quote unquote money, like you're not buying money, you're buying a product. Like money's not a product. Money is money, and I don't know.
I don't know if it's as simple as people are gonna just straight up flock to Bitcoin, because one of the common arguments from no coiners is it's not backed by anything. There's no government behind it, which to me is like, fuck yeah, that's what we want. We don't want government behind our money. But some of these people, it'll be comfortable having a government control it. So they're going to think CBDCs is like, oh, new great technology. And also the government supports it. So why don't we just use this? And also with the whole COVID thing, we've seen people kind of they like being controlled a little bit. There's a certain population. So like, they're going to think, oh, well, we can't spend it right now. It must be in our best interest not to be able to spend this money. Oh, they're tracking where I'm spending it. Well, it must be in everyone's best interest to do that.
Well, and also at that point, probably anyone who says something besides that online, they're done. So that's also why it's so important. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen the graph going around about the growth of the Lightning Network. It's literally going parabolic. There's something like 2,000 Bitcoin now in the Lightning Network. That's why it's so important that we're all tinkering and running our own nodes and figuring out how to fucking balance it's so important now, because that shit's going to be built out by the time that we really need it. And like, you mess around with something like Sphinx Chat and you go, oh, fuck, this is obviously the future, because none of us are going to be allowed to fucking speak on a centralized platform, or at least speak and say what's really on our mind, right? And that was the thing yesterday where Biden's press secretary said, I believe if you're banned from one platform, you should be banned from all of the platforms. This private company bullshit is fucking ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. And the reason that doesn't make any sense is because these private companies like Facebook and Twitter are buddies with the Fed. They're as closely positioned to the money printer as you can possibly get. So fuck the private company stuff. You can be a private company, but if the Fed comes and says, hey, if you don't do what we want you to do, so this private company thing is totally ridiculous. Sorry.
No, that's a good point. I mean, they're essentially like state controlled.
I just hate that point.
It's a private company, but a public platform. It's like counterintuitive. It's very hard to regulate that because there's nothing like that's ever existed before it.
Yeah, I feel like anybody who wasn't like deeply concerned by some of those comments coming out over the past few days by the Biden administration, it's like, you just need to wake up, man. Like that's, I don't know, to me, there wasn't a big enough deal made of that. Like that's some scary shit.
Yeah,
I think what particular announcements are you referring to, just to clarify?
What Kenny was just talking about.
Yeah, I can look for the clip. It was floating around yesterday, but it was the press secretary, doing a press conference, and she basically said that they believe, the administration or whoever believes, that if you're banned from one platform, it makes sense for you to be banned from them all. So I can find the clip. It's somewhere.
She also mentioned that the White House they've clearly been doing this for a while, but she basically said what shouldn't have been said. And she's like, we're flagging posts for Facebook that they should take down. So it's like, oh, we're not telling them directly that they have to take down this content, but we're flagging it. And if they don't, we're standing right here. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and there was also some stuff said about SMS is that what text messages are? SMS providers.
Yeah, they're gonna monitor those,
quote unquote misinformation. And it's just, I mean, it's obvious as day, right? Like if there is a group that can label something as misinformation, then anything is potentially misinformation. And we obviously understand that, but most people don't seem to care really, right?
No, they don't. You know, I had a friend post something on Instagram the other day, like, I forget what the law was back in the day where it required broadcasting to just be fair on both sides, and then that got taken away. And he's like, we need to bring this back. We need to, and he's like, we can't have fake news like Fox News. It's like, so you really just want to ban something and that only that doesn't resonate with your being, you know what I mean? So I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, there's definitely the media's trying. I think the media is really trying to figure out what angle to attack Bitcoin at. They've never come across something that the problem is like, I saw a couple articles coming out after the creator of Doge came out and said that like Bitcoin was inherently right wing, and instantly everyone was like, no, it's not. Like, don't make this like a political thing here. Like, shut the fuck up.
That was just, that was a wild. I couldn't help but laugh at that. It was nuts.
But Nick, I saw you posted this image of all these ASIC miners after they got bulldozed over in Malaysia. And a lot of comments I was seeing on there is like, from a monetary standpoint, it made a lot more sense to just nationalize those miners and mine Bitcoin. But essentially what they're doing here is they decided that, no, it makes more sense to create some propaganda that looks, hey, Bitcoin's bad, go against us, watch what happens, or whatever, you know. I mean, it's, I don't know, Kenny, did you see that video of the bulldozer?
Yeah, I saw that.
broke my heart a little bit.
I also just in the chat, Alan, I put that. It's if you want to pull it up, if you don't know where's, but the video that I was referring to, if anyone hasn't seen it.
Pull it
it's like
up
a short
here.
clip.
Yeah, let me throw the audio on, restart it.
A couple of the steps that we have, that could be constructive for the public health of the country are providing for Facebook or other platforms to measure and publicly share the impact of misinformation on their platform and the audience it's reaching. Also with the public, with all of you, to create robust enforcement strategies that bridge their properties and provide transparency about rules. You shouldn't be banned from one platform and not others for providing misinformation out there. Taking faster action against harmful posts. So a couple of the steps that we have,
that's not good.
And it's just ridiculous. Like,
she's
and it's just like, then it's just like half the time when I say something or if I post on Twitter, I'm just being a fucking idiot and I'm shit posting. So then it's just like, it's just a ridiculous concept.
Don't take away my shit posts, man. Come on now.
Show this tweet.
That's where I draw the line.
Yes, I'm out of here.
I was in a Spaces last night and we started talking about this, and then 10 minutes later it gets mysteriously shut down or crashed.
Guys, we figured out why she wants total control over social media.
Oh my god.
That's gonna get taken down, man. That's gonna get taken down.
The one thing I do like about Twitter is it's much more difficult to get taken down. There's like what it takes to like get removed from Twitter. I think it actually comes down not so much to what you tweet about. It actually comes down to who you piss off. I think they're highly contingent on like a reporting system, and their standards are so low. Like there's porn on Twitter. Like you can be a porn star and like have total like, whatever you want on there and no one cares. Like you don't get taken down. It all comes down to, are you pissing a bunch of people off? Like think of the people who have been banned from Twitter that are Bitcoiners. They're really good at not just saying crazy shit. They say they like really like to piss people off. And so they get reported over and over and over again.
Yeah, they actually Jack and I forgot her name, but she's on the board at Twitter too. They talked about on Joe Rogan's podcast how the banning works, and essentially it's just like there's a ticketed system. They have a bunch of young 20 somethings that go through and essentially it gets escalated enough that it gets in front of one person, and that one person is the deciding factor of should I ban this person or should I not ban this person? And people, you can't trust people to make that decision, like they're going to make the choice that, hey, like this doesn't align with my beliefs and it hurts my feelings too. So ban.
Well, think about who that person is. Like anybody under the age of 20 or 20 something is most likely not going to like you for saying anything that's out of line with, the group think. That's just the way it is. That's how you are when you're young a lot of times, especially with the current generation that's coming up behind us, the younger generation. They're very, very aligned in their thinking.
Yeah, Kenny
hiring all
posted
these
her name
robots
here.
coming out of college.
It's Vija?
I think it's Bija. Yeah,
Bija.
some
BJ
she's like the
Oh. Never mind.
Wrong
I heard
person.
that wrong.
Wrong
I heard
person.
that totally wrong.
Yeah, no, you're good. But yeah, I'm glad there's Bitcoin Twitter and that it's not on any other platform because of how pro Bitcoin Jack is with Square. But I've also learned ultimately Jack has literally no say what goes on with Twitter. So I don't know how defensible the community is up on there. My biggest worry always is if we do approach this CBDC hyper crackdown on Bitcoin, if we get into, and this is like worst case scenario, I don't know, but if they start labeling the use of, and I don't think this is that far-fetched, so hear me out, because we've went into the Middle East and fought wars over currency, just for the petrodollar. But I don't think it would be that far-fetched for the administration to come out and say, if you're using Bitcoin, if you are a proponent of Bitcoin, like it is a financial terror tool, and that it's threatening the sovereignty of our nation or something of that sorts, and maybe that's way far out there. That might be like if like the entire system's crumbling down, but it has been a thought that's gone through the back of my head is like, how far will they go to try and shut something like this down?
I personally think way too many people hold Bitcoin and are interested in this. You know what I mean? Like versus like the petrodollar, it's a lose situation if if the Saudi Arabia or any other country over there starts using other currency to sell their oil. Whereas like here, like you have members of Congress and the Senate who hold Bitcoin and are incentivized to defend it. So I don't know if it's going to play out the same way.
Even more so is you look at MicroStrategy's biggest shareholders, who's right at the top of the list, BlackRock. You look at Coinbase's biggest shareholders, you have Cathie Wood with ARK Invest. And so you have these institutional investors. And then, they have pension funds. So I think that's the big difference, right?
So I've been... No, because this is a really big issue for me because people say like, oh, America's never going to adopt Bitcoin. And I actually just fundamentally disagree with people. Like
I'm with you. I see it as like imagine if the US with the internet would have done essentially what China did. I mean, Silicon Valley is the crown jewel of our economy. It's what propelled the US for the past 20 or 30 years. I just really think that we have to do the same thing. Like Bitcoin is the next equivalent, right?
Here's the thing, though, is like people don't realize. It's people don't realize like the Fed is not a part of the government, and the dollar is on the verge of not being a part of the actual government under government control. But CBDCs, that's a central bank digital currency. It's like Britain, USA all over again, right? Like the parallels are all there. We had separation of church and state. Now we need a separation of money and state. Also the parallels with why we fought the revolution. We fought to get away from taxation without representation. Well, that's what they're doing to us all the time. They're just invisible taxing us with money printing. And so I really think that Americans have the ability more so than any other country. Obviously you see, fledgling countries that are highly centralized in their control, like El Salvador, and companies like MicroStrategy make this move. But countries that are decentralized, like United States, they take a little longer to move. But I ultimately believe that we will move in that direction because that's in our very nature. That's our core principle, is to be rebellious. And I think that we will inevitably move that direction. I don't think that, we're going to ban Bitcoin here and, everyone's just going to lay down and take it. Like there's all this industry that's been built up, like you said, with BlackRock. They're buying everything up. They're invested. They're not going to want to shut the money faucet off for the space. So this is my thing that I try to say. I don't know why no one like resonates with it, because I feel like it's a perfect example of what's going on. We're in the middle of bribing the gatekeepers to the current financial system. Bitcoin is like Genghis Khan. He couldn't break through the wall, so he bribed a gatekeeper to get in. And once he was inside, he was able to totally take over that part of China. Like that's exactly what's happening right now. Bitcoin is bribing the gatekeepers, the people that control the financial system, saying, here you go, you can make a bunch of money. You don't even have to believe in Bitcoin. But if you sell it, then you can make money off of it. Isn't that great? And then all of a sudden they're invested and they have assets now in the Bitcoin space. I'm not going to ban that. That would be crazy. They'd be like chopping off their own arm. But inevitably in 10, 20 years, Bitcoin like a virus will spread now that it's already on the other side of the gate. It's already over. We've already won. There's no way that they can stop it. It's impossible. So I don't see America banning Bitcoin. I see us adopting it and actually getting rid of the Fed completely for once, actually finally getting rid of the scourge that is, what is it? The 12 people that sit and decide our fate on a daily basis.
FOMC.
It's absolutely insane.
I think, I mean, I do agree with you, Dennis, and I certainly deeply hope you're right, but like to the point that Alan was making, like I try to think of the other side and like some of the comments from, Jerome Powell and Senator Warren recently. It's just like, I'm not sure I'm as 100% bullish as you are, like that we have already won. And like, I still believe in like, I don't know. I try to just think of the other side because there's a lot of people that have a vested interest in the dollar and against Bitcoin.
But that's the best part. That's the best part about what's happening right now. They don't actually perceive Bitcoin to be a direct threat to the dollar. They don't understand what's going on. Like us in this room, some of you are like, what have you been in Bitcoin for a short time? Some of you been in longer, but even the people that have been here a short time have a much stronger grasp of what's going on than the Fed. And that's saying something because they're so far behind understanding where we're going that they're actually attacking the wrong target. This is why I only like, shitcoins and these like Tether and all these stable coins, because they're actually a distraction from the real story that's playing out right now. There's all these targets and like, okay, well, CBDCs compete directly with the dollar. We don't like that. Let's get rid of that one. But Bitcoin, they're like, oh, that's digital gold. Don't worry. It's just a store of value. It's not going to be a threat to the dollar. So it's a big advantage for them to view it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good point. I'm
going to continue playing devil's advocate because I always love hearing Dennis rebut all my points here. He's very good at it. So let's say they don't outright ban Bitcoin, but they institute some law that bars the individual from using Bitcoin as a form of daily transaction in order to maintain the dollar in circulation, or they CBDC. They say, hey, you can use Bitcoin as a store of value, but you can't use it for daily transaction. And they might not be legal, but they just tax the shit out of it way more than they already are now.
I mean, I guess I just don't see that happening, but it's, theoretical that they could do that. It's just, you're just playing what ifs, like, which is fine. They could do that. They could try to do that, but all they're doing is they're going to incentivize peer-to-peer marketplaces to develop. So right now, a lot of people use exchanges, which we don't like anyways. So if they say, okay, well, you can't do that, and you need to have CBDCs be your medium of exchange. Well, yeah, people will probably do that initially, but then you're incentivizing a marketplace to develop for a peer-to-peer, wallets where you're the custodian and you can do whatever you want. The government can't stop you. I mean, it's just like the internet. Like you just can't really, if you overregulate it, a lot of times you end up just creating a marketplace for systems that can subvert that. So there's all sorts of marketplaces for systems that subvert the current internet infrastructure. And the tighter they, squeeze down the screws, a lot of times there's these apps and, you've got the dark web, you've got all these other things that are created in order to allow things to continue on. And people had, average people had no problem buying drugs on the internet. So I'm pretty sure that people are going to want to use their Bitcoin. It's just so funny because they always try to say they can stop people from doing things. I don't think it's possible. Maybe it's possible in other countries, but in the United States, we just, you tell us what to do and we're like, fuck off. Like, I'm going to do it anyways.
I think we've seen with this past year that's not as true as we thought it was. I think it's still true, but I don't think it's as true as a lot of us would have liked to think.
Yeah,
I mean, you could be right there.
I agree.
Well,
But the argument I always like to use is look at the war on drugs. Look at how long that's been fought. Look at how costly it was and how it got us nowhere. And the other thing I like to say too is, look, if the US were to implement some crazy tax, I would say another country is going to be incentivized not to, because they're going to bring, by doing so, people who have the money and the wealth and the knowledge are going to gravitate to moving somewhere else where they don't have all these stipulations. I mean, we saw this with China. We see that. We'll look at how screwed North Korea is with their firewall and their internet firewall, and how little innovation can go on in that country. Of course, there's a multitude of other problems when you have an authoritarian dictator like Kim Jong-un. But I think I agree with Dennis overall that there's nothing, you can do things to maybe slow things down by a year, but the end term finish line, I think, remains pretty much in the same place ultimately.
Yeah, and like if you think you were talking about the drug war, I mean, this is a lot different. Like the prohibition of marijuana versus Bitcoin displacing the US dollar, they're very different things. But the fact that states have rights, and no matter what the federal government says, states can make their own decisions, I think that's important too. So politically, Bitcoin is really interesting because politicians are really incentivized to take the side of Bitcoin, because people who don't care a bit about Bitcoin, it doesn't make a difference to them. But for a lot of us, we will be single issue voters, and a lot of Bitcoiners don't really care about the political system, and they probably wouldn't vote. So politicians, we kind of see it with Suarez in Miami, the woman who Dennis mentioned, like the guy from New York, the mayor, I think he just got elected in New York. If you just kind of start mentioning Bitcoin, even if you have no other plans, you don't give a fuck about Bitcoin, it's just your advisor saying that you should mention it, politically, it really has an impact.
Yeah, I think that that's, to me, really, that makes it extremely difficult to ban in the United States. And I think what's going to play out in Wyoming over the next few years, and then we'll see with Eric Adams in, I guess, he's hasn't been elected mayor yet, but we're just assuming he's Democrat primary winner, so he'll win. And then Francis Suarez in Miami, just see how that all plays out. And if they really just start attracting all this talent, investment, and innovation, then they're not going to want to give that up, even if the federal government turns really sour on Bitcoin. And them being,
yeah, and look,
nations is that's,
we need an industry in the U.S. Like right now, our industry is financial services. We export U.S. dollars to the rest of the world. We need an industry in the United States, and Bitcoin mining and energy. That's a clear path forward. At least it seems to be the case to me.
Yeah, I just wonder what the tensions between the states and the government, how high they would be, right? With marijuana, that was one thing, but when we're talking about money, that's a whole different animal, so is Wyoming going to be kind of on the shit list of the federal government? I don't know, I'm just throwing ideas out there.
Well, my point on the drug war, Kenny, was that, look, they couldn't even stop something like marijuana. So how could they stop the masses from opting into a different money?
By banning people who spread misinformation about it.
They can't even keep drugs out of prisons, dude. I mean, it's incredible how absolutely what of an abject failure it was, the war on drugs. I think Biden even said that he made comments on the war on drugs just a day or two ago, and saying that it's been an absolute failure. And it's true. And then they'll have the same problem with any sort of ban on Bitcoin. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that too many people are incentivized to cooperate with Bitcoin. I think we even underestimate the game theory and the incentive structure that Bitcoin has in place. I think if they would have done something like this, 7 or 8 years ago, it could have had a big impact. But that's why I say it's just too late. There's way too much infrastructure. You've got Coinbase, you've got Square, you've got Strike. You've got, the freaking Winklevoss twins over there doing their thing. You have all these big players, and all those people with all that money. Think how much lobbyist power they have. This shit is not going anywhere. We are not going to be able to get rid of this space. And they're definitely not going to ban the name brand, I say cryptocurrency, but it's to them, that's their perspective, that Bitcoin is the name brand. Like, can you imagine if they banned Bitcoin, like how the uproar that there would be in this country? And just like how the war on drugs pushed the growth and creation of marijuana and other drugs to Latin American countries and created cartels down there, it'll have a similar effect. People will leave, people will move, capital will flee. And I think that it will be quick. And I think the United States, if it tries to do some sort of ban, will pretty quickly realize that this is a huge mistake and that they need to revert course. Money is more important than anything to these people. Like, they're not going to want to push away money.
I disagree. I think control is the most important thing to these people. It's in power. They're going to want to control. And like, if
but human beings, individual human beings, money is the most
individual
important
incentive is going to be
money is power.
Collect Bitcoin. Yeah,
you're right though. But that's a good point, Mitch. That power is the most important thing. That's the core, of why people like money, is because it gives them power.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of touch back on what Kenny was saying about Miami. One thing I realized in Miami, I lived there for 8 years, and I went back for the conferences. I'm really happy what Suarez is doing with Bitcoin, but I really wish he wouldn't just focus on the VC money coming in and what problems it can solve in his city. You have Little Haiti in Miami, and I spoke to Captain Haiti, who is a very big figure in Little Haiti. Little Haiti in Miami is probably about 30 by 30 blocks in Miami, one of the biggest countries in the world, and they don't have one fucking bank. It's like El Salvador. And you're talking about American City in Miami that's trying to work on blockchain solutions. Just so to ignore that and to focus only bringing in VC money, I understand that the money is going to help kind of fix those problems, but I also wish he took the narrative of showing how it can assist the people that are on the ground level that really do need it. So, hey, if Pomp can shove that into him, and hopefully he can start working on what he can do to help like the people that really need it. Because listen, all those VC money, all the people that are coming in to Miami right now, they don't necessarily need the Bitcoin. They don't necessarily need it for freedom and liberty. They're pretty well off. It's the people that they can help in Miami, I think they really need to focus on, because that's what's being left in the dust, because we're focusing too much on the money and we're not focusing too much on what the benefits of the network can do overall for society. So I hope he can get that into his mind a little more about just, I respect him wanting to build Bitcoin, but I wish he would also talk about the benefits of the network and what it can bring to those in Miami, besides just bringing in VC money.
I think that's a good point you bring up, Christopher. I was not aware of Little Haiti in Miami, but I think ultimately to bring any kind of innovation to Bitcoin, it's a weird dynamic where you need to incentivize VC money to come in, because once doing so and you build the infrastructure there to educate and inform people about what Bitcoin can do, that's essentially all you're doing is you're fast forwarding adoption, because it doesn't really take much for the people of Little Haiti there to just download a wallet and start transacting with Bitcoin. Once you get a majority of the community doing so, then it becomes a viable option of payment. But I think what we're doing here and talking about it, like the biggest thing about it is just talking about it and educating everyone, because there's so many problems in the current education system right now, talking and educating about money and about finances and how money should work, that it's led to a multitude of problems. And it's why our service industry is so focused on the financial services side, is because there's such a lack of education there. And then just a bunch of false just ideas propagated through that. Like, I always joke around, like, I work in financial services, but like if people knew a thing or two about money, like my job would be non-existent. There literally would be no point for me.
Yeah, and like this is something that I say a lot. So since we all talk a lot, I'm sure you guys have heard me say it, but I think it's worth bringing up here. Like, the fact that we have all of the smartest and most talented people from elite universities all the way down, and they go and they study engineering, but then they don't go and work in the world as an engineer. What do? They either go work at one of the big 3 consulting firms, or they go and they work at an investment bank. That shows that something's fundamentally broken. Our best and our brightest aren't going to build things. They're going to fucking do some financial shell games. And that's true across the boards. All of my best friends who studied engineering, chemistry, any of the hard sciences, they're all working as consultants for some big fucking strategy consulting or their investment banks, right?
Yeah, there's
And
way
that
too much
just shows,
incentive. There's way too much incentive to be, part of the financial system, to be someone that's, a banker or, a financial engineer. It's unfortunate that so many people are getting sucked into that industry because they don't create any value whatsoever.
Right. But where are a lot of these people starting to go work? They're working on Bitcoin. It's definitely happening. It's one of the things that makes me feel most bullish about everything.
They just got to find it. That's all.
And also, by the way, can I say Jack Mallers has been on fucking fire lately? I'm not sure.
I have his video pulled up here about him destroying Brian Armstrong.
That is amazing. But also, I think the way that he's explaining the difference between Bitcoin the asset and Bitcoin the network is so fucking important. We understand that, but I think he's doing like kind of similar to what Michael Saylor did with this like digital gold store of value narrative. He's doing that he's explaining it really well to people who don't understand the difference and why Bitcoin the network is so important. But his fucking podcast has been getting me fired up.
Oh, the one he just did with Peter was gold.
Hell yeah. And Preston too. Amazing.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin, I mean, that's like so important because Bitcoin, the network, is going to help the most people. Like Bitcoin, the asset, is only going to be helpful to certain people that are, investing, whereas Bitcoin, the network, is going to help billions of people all around the world. And so like somebody that's out there fighting for, the network and talking about the network and educating people about the network and spreading it around the world is important. And Jack's just, he's crushing it, dude. He's awesome.
I think he does talk about it in this video. I'm going to play it here real quick for anyone who hasn't seen it. Also, it's just great. And it's sped up. So
enables companies to be that disruptive and be that big. The biggest companies in the world in 5 to 10 years will be Bitcoin companies because they'll be open network, internet-like companies, but financial services firms who make a ton of money because the value of a single user is known and how to make money on them is known, and it's decentralized. The biggest retailer in the world.
I'm going to find one that's slower. That's way too fast for myself.
Man, if you listen to podcasts on 2x speed, you can listen to twice as many.
Ha ha ha. Funny.
I'm good at the 1.5 to 1.8 range. You go to the 2, some people, they just talk too fast and I can't digest the information. But I always speed it up. The funny part is when you listen to it sped up and then you go to the regular level, it sounds like everyone has some sort of like speech impediment.
It's true. I listen to everything on 1.5 speed. It just makes you can consume more.
Yep.
I think this one should be good here. Yep.
Similar to a Facebook, similar to a Google, similar to a Twitter, where I can build a product accessible by 8 billion people. However, I'm a financial services firm. I know how I'm going to make money. I don't have to sell user data. I don't ever plan on appearing before Congress. I don't ever plan on surfing with an American flag on the 4th of July like Zuckerberg and becoming the most hated man on the planet, right? I actually think Strike will become one of the more powerful consumer brands on the planet because we have the business acumen and profile of a financial services firm like a Cash App, and we can build a brand that's tremendously powerful, in line and incentivized with our users. But we are an open network business like an internet company, and we have access to all 8 billion people. So all that to say, Bitcoin enables companies to be that disruptive and be that big. The biggest companies in the world in 5 to 10 years will be Bitcoin companies because they'll be open network, internet-like companies, but financial services firms who make a ton of money because the value of a single user is known and how to make money on them is known, and it's incentivized. The biggest retailer in the world is using Stripe's API to process payments, and we charge them 10 basis points compared to Visa charging them 300. We're making money. They're saving money. Our users are getting more rewards and having a better experience. Everyone wins. Everyone wins. Now, all this long rant to say, Brian Armstrong whiffed. He fucked this up big time. He just missed it. He missed this opportunity. And it shows a very fundamental lack of understanding of why Bitcoin's important, how Bitcoin was going to scale, how the Lightning Network works, why it's the best monetary network on the planet, why it's going to usher in this disruption, and how the ultimate scalable business model of a financial Bitcoin company is charging the biggest retail in the world 10 basis points versus Visa's 300. And that you cannot charge and live on 4% for retail to buy Bitcoin because it's a race to the bottom and it's going to go to zero anyway. And buying Bitcoin on an app is a feature. It's not a business. It's a competitive market. It's a race to the bottom. And you saw that in the equities market. And so what Brian Armstrong somehow did, to his own fault, and that's why I'm calling him out, is he tried to replicate the equities market.
Yeah, I don't think anyone else could say it better than the great Jack Mallers.
And like, that's important. I mean, Coinbase is a $60 billion company, right? Like
public company now too.
Public, and 94%, I think it was what he said, his revenues come from fees.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, I mean, man, and he didn't need to do that. He did that to make a point, right? He could have put his fees down to 50 basis points and made some money. He's a startup, right? He's funding, but he didn't do that. He went right to zero.
Ultra low time preference.
I just think this is interesting. Like, I love what Swan has been doing, but it'll be interesting to see. Like, I'm assuming their fees are going to stay somewhere near they are 1%, but they've built up such a brand and they have so much trust with Bitcoin, especially the Bitcoin community, especially Bitcoin maximalists, because that's ultimately what's going to matter, right? If it's a race to the bottom, the only thing that you can compete on is how easy is your product or service to use and what have you done to build your brand. I'm going to keep using Swan. I use it for DCA. Auto.
Swan's fees, though, they donate a chunk of them to Bitcoin core development, right?
I'm not sure.
Also, if you're a Swan influencer, I know, like, if you recommend someone, they sign up using your code, you get a chunk of their fees.
Yeah, it's not very much, but it's more than zero. I think it's 25% of their fees for 3 years. So, you know, if you recommend someone and they end up buying $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, you get $250. So not very much if you're a smaller person, but if you have a lot of, you know, rich
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to be, so they're going to start at 0.3% and then eventually move down to 0.1%. And apparently the only reason they're even charging anything is to help pay the spread charged by the market making firms, which are going to supply the Bitcoin to Strike. So they're not even making any money on it.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I don't know if mine's not updated or not, but I still can't buy Bitcoin on Strike.
I don't think it's fully rolled out yet.
Yeah. Well, you've always kind of been able to buy Bitcoin through Strike, right? Because I've always done it that way, where I just debited from my bank account, sent it to a Lightning wallet, and then eventually sent it in the cold storage. It was a pain in the ass. So this will make it easier, but
yeah, I think the spreads are much higher right now too. Like the cost to buy is much higher when you're doing it through the app. So they're gonna do the full blown exchange experience. Look, I think not experience, but like Cash App, where it'll be that one button and then you can buy. I mean, are they going to do selling on there? I'm imagining they're doing buying and selling.
I hope not. That
would be pretty awesome if they did just a buy button.
Well, that's what Swan does. Is they just have a buy button.
I think that he inevitably wants it because he talked about it in that episode with Peter McCormick, having it set up in a way where you can be anywhere in the world and easily get in and out of any currency. So like you could travel quickly and easily, and get it deposited in your account or have access to, foreign currencies very easily.
What their current product does, right? Like their current product is just Venmo on the Bitcoin rails, which is fucking amazing. Like I'm basically to the point where if someone's like Venmo me, I'm like, no, download Strike and send me it through Strike just because
Strike me.
I like it better. Yeah, Strike me.
That's what I tell people. I said that to my buddy the other day. He's like, hey, shoot me a Venmo. I said the same thing. I go, no, dude, go download Strike. We're going to both get some sats and then I'm going to go send you some dollars. So, and I think that's just how the adoption's got to work. I think Jack knows that, or both Jacks, I should say. I had to think about that for a second. Jack Mallers and Jack Dorsey both know that, and Jack Dorsey's come out and said this too, that they're doing, I don't know if it's a new company under the Cash App name, but he said there's a new project that he tweeted out. He's like, it's going to be fully open source, open development, fully transparent, that we know like you can't do anything with Bitcoin behind closed doors. Nothing's ever going to work out long term if we do it that way. And guys like Jack Mallers and Jack Dorsey, I think, are really going to pave the way for how a Bitcoin company should work and should operate.
Yeah, you got that wallet coming out too. That's interesting.
I think that's what it was in reference to there. I can pull up the account that he made for it. Got some dead air here. Come on, guys. You don't need me to keep conversation going.
So what I got from the Lightning Network from Cody was that the main secret sauce and the juice is going to be buy-in from merchants. Really, that's how we're going to get Lightning Network to take off. Because if you don't have any merchants accepting it, these peer-to-peer payments and small transactions, they're really it doesn't mean anything unless you start using it as a medium of exchange. So, what do you guys think about that in terms of like business buy-in?
It looks like Dennis is about to say something. I think this kind of relates to the point I think I was making earlier, is like with time, like the Lightning Network is in really, really early days right now. It's pretty tough to get things up and rolling if you aren't very technical. But that'll be taken care of with time. So I think that's ultimately, it's going to make sense for every merchant to be interoperable with the Lightning Network, just because it's going to be so much cheaper. But I think it's advantageous for all of us if it actually takes a little longer, because then we can get, the network needs time to mature.
Well, yeah. And also, I don't think Bitcoin is in a place that it's ready for 7 billion people to be using it, like Kenny was saying. But I do agree that inevitably the incentives will be too strong. It only makes sense for small businesses and large businesses to eventually transition a system where they're getting charged 10 basis points versus 300, because not only are you saving money, you're now able to take that money and give it to your customer. And that's really what's going to start to speed up the use of Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, because there will be so many incentives in place for people to spend their Bitcoin. They might even say, not only will we give you the 3% right to you as a customer if you use this app, but we'll give you like an additional $10 off your purchase today, any purchase over $25, because they want your Bitcoin so badly. They don't want the dollars anymore. So I really see the incentive structure getting like going into hyperdrive in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think it will be so easy to integrate because everybody already has all these POS systems. All it takes is a mild software upgrade to the current systems that they already have. So it's going to take over like all this overnight. Like, remember when we went from like doing the, what are those things called with the credit cards and debit cards? You had to like do the carbon copy of it. And then it was like 10 years later, it was like, boom, all of a sudden everybody had POS systems, and it was like, made it seem so much easier to use. And then everybody started using debit and credit. So that's what's going to happen with Lightning. As soon as it gets integrated everywhere. And then also I'm sure Jack will probably build something in where you can spend your Bitcoin and then rebuy your Bitcoin, right? At the same price. So you're not actually losing any of your Bitcoin. Like, the shit's going to get wild. Like,
yeah. And I think
Jack is destroying whole industries with a single app.
Yeah. I think the thing that still everyone is discounting is just like all of the other shit that's going to be built on top of the Lightning Network. I was in Clubhouse yesterday or 2 days ago, and Jimmy Song was on for like an hour, and he was explaining how he thinks the Lightning Network is going to continue to grow and how everything's going to play out. And he basically made the point that like all this Web 3.0 shit, it's going to happen, but it's going to be built on top of the Bitcoin network. And he went into it in a lot of detail, and I don't want to try to repeat it because I would butcher it. But just, the main thing being that like getting away from this advertising model, the fact that if you run a business, the way that you need to make money is essentially by fucking your users over. The way to transfer very, very, very small amounts of value to one another through the internet, that's going to be, so I think that's the thing that people are still really discounting. Like, at least that's the way I see it.
The advertising model doesn't only fuck the user over, it fucks the company over, because the advertisers are inevitably censor said company. Because they are so beholden to.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point.
Free market rate. If you had advertising where you had to bid on it, it would make it a free market. If you think of it.
What do you mean by that?
So let's say there's a top spot instead of having, it's hard to explain. Let me put some thought behind that, to be honest with you, before I give you a full explanation.
Yeah, and this is why, like,
I want
for any of you guys or for anyone listening, like, download Sphinx Chat and fuck around with it. It's still buggy, gets messed up, but like once I downloaded Sphinx Chat and started using it, I just was blown away because I was like, holy fuck, like there's so many things that are going to happen that many of us aren't thinking about.
Yeah, Sphinx Chat is really interesting. I think that it also, just like with you saying, you know, you're beholden to your advertisers, I think it gives content creators a way to build an audience and not have to be beholden to their, you know, the ad companies. Cause that's true. Like sometimes when I'm like on, you know, making an episode and someone starts going on a crazy rant, I'm like, well, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, you know, this is nobody's going to want to advertise on this video, but I shouldn't even be thinking about that. I shouldn't even be concerned whatsoever. I should be purely focused on the conversation and just having a fluid conversation and getting something out of them that, you know, the audience will appreciate. And the audience likes that stuff. They like that raw content, like how Joe Rogan, I mean, kind of used to be. He's toned down a lot since moving to Spotify, but people want that
Dennis,
authentic,
like, it actually
unfiltered
works
content.
the opposite way, right? So what you're saying is basically you're self-censoring. You're censoring yourself. It's not conscious, but it's happening in the back of your mind. With a model where if I was listening to your podcast and I can stream you money instantly, once you start saying some crazy shit, I'm fucking smashing that button and I'm sending you 10,
exactly
20, 100, 1,000 sats, right? So
Dennis,
people
will be more truthful.
Who's got an invitation code for Sphinx Chat?
So you don't need an invitation code. You just need to either hook it up to your own node and put some sats in it that way, or if you don't have your own node, which you should, but if you don't have your own node, you can pay like $3 with a credit card and then it'll put some sats into your account that way.
Okay.
Dennis,
I started mine. Are any of you on Sphinx?
I need to. I've been like delaying it, but I feel like as like a podcaster, we really, as a Bitcoin podcaster, Dennis, we really need to make the push to get onto Sphinx.
Let me see if this works. Hold on. Memes up. Wait, what the fuck? Can I change this? No. How do I share it? I wonder. Oh shit. Oh, the tribe QR code. That's weird.
Do you have your own tribe, Dennis?
Yeah, I have my own tribe. I started it a while ago just to lock up the name, and to lock the stuff up.
Cool. Yeah, because
I wasn't sure if
offline. I'll join your tribe.
Yeah, because I want to kind of play around with it just to get my feet wet and understanding of how it works. Because eventually that's what I want to do. I have my Telegram. If you guys want to join that, by the way, it's just t.me/SmartPeoplesHit, but I'll put it down here. But eventually I want to migrate that to Sphinx Chat because I've been seeing a lot of people have been having a lot of success. I'm just so new. I don't want to push people towards something that they don't understand or know how to use. So I've been just using Telegram in the meantime.
It's pretty well. You can do both as well. Like Preston Pish, he did that bar tour in Miami, and so everything was through Sphinx Chat, and it was it's one of those things where it's new and it's definitely not as good as the alternatives yet, but it's still it's just amazing to see.
Yeah, but I want to be, an early adopter. I don't want to be someone. So if you copy paste that, you guys can join my Telegram. But I want to be an early adopter of the technology and be ahead of the game, though. I don't want to be someone who's getting in on it at the last possible moment.
Yeah, join that Telegram. Me, Moist, and Shawn are all in there, and Jacob. Actually, I don't know if Shawn's in there, but I know me, Moist, and Jacob are in there. Along with a couple other podcasters and people from the Bitcoin Twitter community. I know Jacob's been down there just chilling on the beach the entire morning. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that. What are you drinking, Jacob?
These Cutwaters. You ever heard of these? Cutwater margaritas?
No, can I buy it with Bitcoin?
I don't believe they accept yet, but they maybe soon. But they're fantastic.
Need to work on that.
A Bitcoin themed drink. Someone needs to do that. That would be good branding.
Bitcoin beer.
We're on so what I've noticed this halving cycle, and maybe it's just because I'm just getting into it. I don't know, but it seems like there's a hyper networking going on. Hypernetworkization. I don't know. That's a terrible word. I hate stealing.
I love it. It's perfect.
It feels like that's what's going on right now. And all of a sudden there's a mad rush to all right, Lightning works. Every Strike's demonstrating this. we got companies like Swan Bitcoin, we got Jack behind some big movers. And everyone else, I think, is kind of doing in this mad rush to how can I contribute? And I think in the next 4 years, there's going to be some crazy stuff on the horizon. Crazy stuff. I mean, already we see it. We had Dennis, you were talking to Aarika Rhodes. I saw you guys going back and forth on Twitter. Tell me a little bit about that conversation with her.
That was really cool, Dennis, that you kind of orange pilled her or set her down the path.
Yeah. So it started with, Brad Sherman making his comments, and we got a telegram together of some people that wanted to try to figure out how we could troll him or, maybe support a candidate that opposes him. And so I put out that tweet saying, hey, Aarika Rhodes, and I don't know if you can find it easily or not, but Aarika Rhodes, your opponent is in favor of a Bitcoin ban, blah, 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 blah. What's your position and what's your opinion around this? And so it got a lot of attention, the tweet. And then eventually it got so many likes and retweets that she responded to it. Do you have it there?
Yeah.
And that's the one. That's another one too. She's done multiple now, but I got her to respond, and she said something decent. She said something like, "Okay, all right, I can work with this." She didn't say cryptocurrencies or blockchain. So I was feeling very optimistic. I started DMing her and asked her a couple of qualifying questions and liked what she said. So that's when we got on the phone, we started chatting. I've been on the phone with her probably like 20, 30 times and kind of talked about various different things, but she's got the Bitcoin standard. She's reading that. I set up a call with her and a bunch of other members of the Telegram, which I don't want to talk too much about the people that are in there, but there's some pretty big heavy hitters that are going to hopefully be getting behind her as a candidate. So a lot of things that she supports, you guys won't support, but I think ultimately the point is to shove it to Brad Sherman and show him what the Bitcoin community is all about, show him what the Cyber Hornets are all about. And she's also had that's the first tweet. I also like that she's pro financial literacy. She wants to bring financial literacy back to schools. She's really big on helping her community. There will be things on her platform people won't like. Again, like I said, she's a Democrat. Plenty of Bitcoiners are pretty strongly opposed to anything Democrats are in favor of, but I think it's a moral and economic responsibility to, promote a candidate that might take out one of our most outspoken critics.
Yeah. And Dennis, look, this is what we were just talking about. Bitcoiners are going to be single issue voters, and they're going to put their support behind people that they may not agree with in other areas if they support Bitcoin, especially if they're going against someone like Brad Sherman. And then once people see that Ms. Rhodes here has success with it, they're going to try to replicate that. And there's going to be some network effects to that.
So the other thing too is that it's one last point here real quick is that it's not just to get other candidates to speak about Bitcoin. It's to get people to shut the hell up and keep their mouth closed if they have anything negative to say. Because if you say something negative, you're going to lose your damn seat. And that will have ripple effects across all of the political spectrum. If we're actually able to do something with this candidate, then it will have a massive impact on the political space and have the dialogue around Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's like building a moat or just further building out the moat around Bitcoin. So I like that point.
People are attacking me a little bit. It's like, you know what? Here's the thing. I don't really want to move. I don't have the ability to easily move out of this country if I have to because of Bitcoin being banned. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen. And I'm going to make sure that we get candidates in there that are going to knock out, people that oppose Bitcoin. So I'm willing to take on the risk of the Cyber Hornets attacking me a little bit because they don't like her politics.
I agree. We should definitely be supporting the Bitcoin politicians, but I disagree a little bit on. I don't think every Bitcoiner is going to be a single issue voter because I'm just looking at her platform. She supports the Green New Deal, like state controlled healthcare, stuff like that. I don't see a lot of Bitcoiners getting on board with that. And I mean, I don't know anything about the guy she's running against. If he's anti-Bitcoin, obviously he's a terrible candidate too, and I wouldn't vote. I don't live in California, so it's not like I can vote anyways, but the Green New Deal and state-run healthcare, to me, Bitcoin is just an avenue for freedom. And when you have policies like that, that's not really free market based. So even if she is pro Bitcoin, it's still, I feel like liberty first, in my opinion.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here and kind of side with Dennis that I think Bitcoin as a single policy issue is the most important thing anybody can vote towards, because regardless of where she stands on stuff like the Green New Deal, the two can't coexist inevitably.
Exactly.
And so
to me, that makes me think she's going to go Bitcoin is just a front, and then she's more for
and
the
she'll
Green New
get
Deal.
voted out right away if that's the case. If it
I
turns
hope so.
out, if it turns out that's the case, she will get voted out right away. And the other thing too is we don't want Bitcoin, again, it's the most apolitical political thing out there. So we don't want Bitcoin to side with any political party. That once that happens, Bitcoin's gonna, especially
I agree, but I think it's already happened. I think it's too late for that.
Bitcoin's
I think the ball is rolling in that direction.
Bitcoin's very libertarian in its values. And as it stands right now, a lot of libertarians vote right. But personally, me personally being a voting American, I personally despise both of the two biggest parties here in the US. I don't think they have any of our interest in mind at all. And they're just all clawing for whatever power grab they can do next. So I tend to.
So
it's
one of the good
funny
points
that
about Bitcoin though is like it can just be a power grab. Like she might not, and I don't know anything about her, so like I'm not going to say anything negative or positive about her, but like she might just be using it as a power grab, and a lot of people are going to use it just for that reason. And even if we don't necessarily, as Bitcoiners, or I don't speak for anybody, but like if you don't agree with the rest of their policies, it's like at least you're expanding Bitcoin and you're kind of pushing liberty through that way, which might ultimately kind of work against some other pieces of her platforms in the long run.
The platform that she runs on can't exist in a Bitcoin standard is the first thing. Bitcoin will fix all of the other issues that are in her platforms, the problems that she's trying to solve. The way she's going about it is not something that I necessarily agree with politically, but ultimately Bitcoin is money for enemies, and it will be adopted by, I think, almost all levels of the political spectrum. I think it's obvious to see some of the libertarian tendencies that are built into Bitcoin. And a lot of people on the right appreciate it because it's kind of rebellious and a giant fuck you to the government, which they always love. But it has the ability to deliver on a lot of what really I think Democrats and liberals really do want in this country, which is they want the average person to be able to be successful. And Bitcoin enables that in the long term by making real estate more affordable. I mean, we could get into the argument about why that's going to happen over the long term, but basically Bitcoin is 1,000x better as a store of value and will suck out all of the store of value premium of real estate market and will make real estate more affordable for the average person. It'll make rents cheaper. It'll stop super wealthy people from parking their wealth in the real estate market. Stop BlackRock from buying up, massive swaths of neighborhoods. It'll also put workers in a better position when negotiating their salaries. So currently, the way the system works is that workers have to negotiate their salaries up because of inflation. In the new system, workers will have to be in the better negotiating stance because the employer will have to theoretically negotiate their salary down as deflation occurs over time. So it actually is good for the worker. It's good for middle class jobs because if we get rid of, which is a big, really, if you look at it, I know that both sides have gone extreme and on all sorts of different things, but the core principles of what the Democrats really want is like good middle class paying jobs, right? They always talk about that. They want people to be able to live on one salary. Well, if we get rid of the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, it gets rid of the Triffin dilemma problem and allows our exports to be cheaper, which means we can get back to actually creating stuff instead of just exporting software and financial services to the world and the dollar itself. So there's a lot of things. I mean, I could go on. I'm not going to keep going on. We've just been talking for so long already, but it's like everybody sees the obvious reasons why Republicans and libertarians would like Bitcoin, but people on the left, there's a lot of them out there. They're not as outspoken, and so you don't hear about them as often, but there's a lot of things in Bitcoin that are highly attractive to people on the left. And I think as time goes on, you're going to see a rebalancing of what I noticed it too and was worried about it. And that's kind of why I've become focused on discovering ways to advertise or talk about Bitcoin in a way that would be attractive to, people on the left and Bitcoiners. Similar to how Jimmy Song wrote "Thank God for Bitcoin" so that he could get Christians to be attracted to Bitcoin as well.
I do see a lot of people on the left, though, they're getting their news from the traditional mainstream sources who aren't pro Bitcoin, and they're pushing a lot of the ESG FUD which is something that people on the left also care about. If they think Bitcoin's going to destroy the earth, they're not going to get on board with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's
They
plenty
just
of
might take
arguments to
them-
be made where you can say that Bitcoin will incentivize green energy production. Bitcoin actually reduces carbon emissions by taking flared gas, using it to mine with, and reducing methane emissions, which are actually 24 times more powerful of a greenhouse gas. So it's I get it. I know that I get the pessimistic outlook. It's just that I have a very optimistic outlook, because every time we've said, oh, this problem, Bitcoin has always been able to overcome those issues. And so that's why I live now in that kind of optimistic, okay, well, how can we solve this? How can we improve the discussion around this topic, and then deliver that to people? Because I feel like it's inevitable that it's going to take over. And I want to try to get as many people on board as possible, as early as possible.
Dennis, it seems like sort of like a gradually then suddenly type thing with the, people who have more aligned with the liberal idea. Like, they've been more resistant to it to this point, but maybe once it catches on, it'll just spread like wildfire throughout that, that side of the political spectrum. That's kind of a thought that I've had in the past. It's like, we're not anywhere near there yet.
Well, if you think about it, Bitcoin in and of itself is a public good. And you know how much people on the left like socialism. They love when things are shared and controlled by the community. So Bitcoin really is very socialistic in that sense. I mean, a lot of people on the right don't want to hear that. They think that's a crazy way to describe it, but you want people on the left to view it that way. That way they're more willing to adopt it. Listen, there's more people on the left than there are on the right in this country. And I think it's important to make sure that we are keeping an open dialogue with both sides.
Yeah, well, and ultimately, like, Bitcoin doesn't really have like a narrative. People construct a narrative around Bitcoin. And it's important to have separate narratives that give the same core message at the end of the day, just in its nice own wrapping paper for whatever people like.
It's true.
We need to spread more of that clip of Trump going out against Bitcoin, because there's a faction of people on the left who will go anything. Trump says one thing, they're going to do the complete opposite.
Good idea.
So we need the left to see that.
Oh, for sure.
I think
our marketing efforts
in government, the better that are learning about this, or at least attempting to start learning about it, the better. So hats off to you for that, man. That's awesome. I really think that's a great that's just awesome. But
I'll get blowback for it, but I think it's worth it inevitably.
Yeah, before I go, I got to go finish up my homework. But we were talking earlier about an incentive for small businesses to start using Lightning. I've worked in hospitality and restaurants and hotels my entire life. That's my background. So I'm working on an incentive layer on top of Bitcoin that's going to help do that. So if you guys are interested or want to join the team or help contribute, just reach out to me on Slack. We're building a project together. We have a lot of people in the cohort that are already interested that have joined. So if you're interested in joining, please let me know, reach out on Slack. But I really enjoyed this conversation today. I didn't realize it would go so long, but yeah, man, guys, I got to go. Thank you. I'll see you next week. I really enjoyed it. I think this was an awesome podcast, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I'll talk to you guys soon.
For sure, Christopher. Thanks for joining in. And we'll chat more on the side. I'm curious to hear about what you're doing.
You got it. Just reach out Slack and I'll send over some info for you.
For sure, Christopher. Take care. All right, guys. I think we're kind of approaching the 2.5 hour mark here for Sunday Scary. So I think I'm gonna wind it down here. I got to spend some time with family before I tackle on the next endeavors. But you guys joined this is the biggest Sunday Scaries yet, which was pretty awesome. I was definitely not prepared like I should have been. I didn't think this many people were going to hop on. So as always, everybody in here, thanks for coming on. That whoever's left in here already, I think we're all well acquainted with one another. But I'm going to post the Twitter links for everybody that was participating in here. Biggest follows for sure. Definitely go follow Dennis. He was outside Pomp's crypto course. So if you want some information that's not just within the course, go give him a follow. Go follow his podcast, SmartPeopleShit. Jacob produces both of them, produces ours and SmartPeopleShit. So if you're supporting Dennis, you're supporting the COB podcast, and then you're supporting Bitcoiners as well. So please go do that. Go give Kenny a follow on Twitter as well. He is the brains and bronze behind the crypto course, although he won't admit it. But he also is very knowledgeable And I've come to consider him a friend here in the last couple of weeks. And then Nick does great contributions on his Substack.
Sign up for Nick's Substack. It's the shit.
It's very good. So I'll have all the links down in the description below. If you haven't liked, subscribed, or hit the notification bell, please do so. I always post the link every Friday evening around 5 p.m. for the Zoom link for this Sunday Scaries. We record on Saturday mornings, and then I post it again one more time on my Twitter the morning before. So you can go give me a follow at Alan Hoddle, or you can go follow the COB podcast at COB podcast. So guys, thanks for hopping on again. Can't forget Moist. Down below, go give my co-host Moist a follow real quick. He's at Moist BTC. So
I was told to take that handle off my resume. Apparently might rub some people the wrong way.
Did you really? Wow, that's not good. That's hilarious. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for coming on.
See you, buddy.
Peace.